sure he's here, Uncle Nev?
Yeah, no, he said he'd be here, yeah. Just bash on the door there, just bash on the door, yeah. There, Darby.
I think he's there, Uncle Nev.
Darby, you bastard.
Uncle Nev? Where do you think Darby is?
I reckon he might be off at one of those, those parties that he's been at recently.
yes.
Did you? Did you hear that last podcast? Did you hear that? What was it again?
That was
yeah, that's it.
BDSM, Uncle Nev.
Yeah, it was disgusting. What stands for?
Filthy.
What does it stand for? Bogans, drongos, stupid mongrels. I
Uncle Nev.
want to tell you something, young Jason.
Yes, what's that, Uncle Nev?
Auntie Nora and I never dabbled in any of that. Nothing like that ever went on, young Jason, I'll tell you that.
No, I don't think very much ever happened in those states at all, Uncle Nev. It might explain why she's not with you anymore, you know?
What? What are you trying to say?
You're not the most adventurous man, Uncle Nev.
Adventurous? I'll have you know I've been out pig shooting in leather boots.
Oh, right, Uncle Nev. Yeah.
You're probably right there, but nah, not my cup of tea at all. Especially not as like if it's dripped on you in little drips, you know.
Oh, Uncle Nev, like
Chinese
candles.
torture water thing, whatever it's called, you know. No, I'm not into that sort of stuff. No, it's disgusting. The Dumbed Down Atheist, welcome along.
Oh. 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 Oh, Nora. Please come back, I won't ignore you. Oh, Nora. This time I'll do so much more for you. I implore you.
That's right, we're all grown ups here. Oh, read them out, son, read them out. Come
I
on.
like you, Uncle Nev, all right?
Oh, W.
In the penises, there were penis plug,
Yeah, best place for it.
30 magnetic buckyballs,
Yes,
a
yes.
dice, a fish tank air hose,
Yeah.
an antenna,
Oh, God.
a sewing needle,
Maybe Darby's
a beaten
party.
pellet, and a wide wooden dowel.
Oh, yeah, Dow, tell me how, Dow.
Oh, Nora. Please come back, I won't ignore you. Oh, Nora. This time I'll do so much more for you. I implore you. Oh. 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 Oh.
Well, rectums, yeah. Let's see, what have we got here? Pencils.
More than one, yeah?
Yes, two of them.
Yeah.
Shampoo bottle, cologne bottle.
Oh,
Well, it'd
nice.
make it smell nicer, wouldn't it, Uncle Nev? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it'd be like a little breath of fresh air every time someone popped off. A lotion jar, a soda can, a soda bottle, a flashlight.
Well, it's dark in here, isn't it?
Yes, it is dark in there. You're right, Uncle Nev.
Well,
Yes.
well, no, it is, you know. You think all those years I've been sucking septics, I've got to tell you, I've had a few things stop up me pipes at times.
Oh.
I'm no stranger to finding some of those things, you know. In people's tank.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
Yeah, what are you two doing in here? I thought it was today we were
Get in
recording.
here.
Uncle Nev.
Well, it's all Jason's fault. I didn't want to do it. I said,
Uncle Nev,
no,
don't blame me.
don't, Jason. No, Darby will be pissed off. I said, Shall never be slaves. We'll never, 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 never be slaves.
Robert Darby, the Dumbed Down Atheist Program, podcast, the host, and etc., part 2. Followed by a little bit of Anton Hill, a.k.a. the Atheist Asshole.
Oh, look at here. Looks like somebody threw away a perfectly good white boy.
Because I'm very much a skeptic. I'm more of a skeptic than I am an atheist. I mean, atheist is a conclusion based on my skepticism.
You'll have to come like a little child to the foot of the cross.
That attitude is what is responsible for the rise of atheism.
That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith? With the death penalty. Thank you.
This is Apostasy Now.
For people to get the information correct before they start yapping.
Get ready to root for the bad guys.
Begins with E, evidence. All the evidence.
He's apparel. Going down, Mr. Tyler. Loving it, elevator, living it up when we're going down. So I was talking about Billy Bragg. Oh, hang on, I need to press record on my thing just in case your thing fails. And I was talking, Billy Bragg had said to Mark Maron that, he had found people of faith who actually do good things for people. He found he couldn't fault them. And then he sort of said the same thing of Dawkins and various. So I do think, and this is only my opinion, I think therefore I am single. No, I think therefore I am. That we have to, look, we're not in charge of it. We are like herding cats. I'm not in charge of Greta Christina going out and saying stuff, nor am I in charge of Matt Delahunty. But if I was going to throw in my 2 cents, I would say we kind of need to watch ourselves, because there have been a lot of advancements made in the field of making people think more clearly about the so-called invisible man who lives in the sky.
Yeah.
And I think great strides have been made thanks to the internet, and a bunch of dedicated people have kind of got out there and done their thing. But I think from what I'm seeing, and it's only my myopic view of the world, that we've got to watch ourselves, because we may end up undoing all of the good work that we've done. We may end up sending people running back to religion when they find that we're godless hedonists who think we know everything about everything, because we don't know everything about everything. And we've kind of, in a way, got to watch the bullshit that goes on amongst ourselves. Not that I'm any better, because if someone baits me, I can't help it. I will. I know I will. I will. If somebody gets under my skin, I know I will go on the show, and I know I will give them a panning. I know I will.
But Rob, you have a good sense of humor about yourself and about the work, right? So you don't thump your chest when someone dares to question you. No. If they say to you, "Well, you're an atheist. How do you know that?" Like, I disagree with you. You don't right away either shut them down or shit on them for it. And that's the attitude I don't understand.
I kind of understand it a little bit. No, honestly, I know a young kid. You know him too. And literally, I gave him a ride home last Sunday, and he started talking to me about how he'd spoken to angels. And instead of entertaining the conversation and trying to be I disagree with you, and being kind of level-headed about it, my initial reaction was kind of the one that flew out of my mouth, and that was oh, so you're fucking crazy. Kermit the Frog sends his regards. Snuffleupagus says so-and-so, and
but you don't just meet someone and then just do that. You've known him for a while.
No, I've known him for a while.
So it's okay once you're friends with someone, then you're allowed to treat them like shit when they're sleeping. I think that's a different rule. That's a different rule.
But the funny thing with that is I expect a religious person to do that. When they say, hey, I got a personal relationship with Jesus, I just know it deep down in my heart, and nothing you can say is ever going to change, blah, blah, blah. I expect that from them because that is the position. I can understand it, okay? I don't agree with it, but I can understand I don't expect any better. If I get someone who is a believer, who is more open-minded, I'm pleasantly surprised. But I do know that from time to time I am going to come up against that. I find that, however, less acceptable from the skeptical atheist community. When someone says, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, I find that way more reprehensible. Yeah. And I am a person who could bury the hatchet. I could be friendly towards a Greta Christina or someone like that if they came to the party and said, look, we got off on the wrong foot, let's bury the hatchet. I am a person who will bury the hatchet, but I think we've got a lot of angry people that we need to, I don't know how you iron it out. I don't know how you iron it out, but I do think we run the risk of being seen as a bunch of jokers, basically.
Well, it's like any movement, though. Like, if you let the radical fringe speak loudest, and those that want a more level-headed approach don't step forward and start voicing their counterpoint, then all the people outside that body, outside that movement, are the loudest, most obnoxious voices. Yeah. So really, the responsibility for bringing it back on course falls to those of us, if I am able to include myself in the us statement, who are more moderate and able to say, no, I don't believe what she or he is saying. Yeah. This is my view, and it's a more rational view, and then show evidence why it's a more rational view.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and we need to realize there are boundaries there that we have to respect, because you're not going to win anybody over by coming across as an arrogant son of a bitch, and that's how it is. Look, I have a great problem with the religious body that gets into my son's primary school. It's a state-run school, and half an hour a week is handed over to our friends from Access Ministries. And that absolutely barbecues my potatoes. Because in Australia we have falling maths and science standards. We're bad. We're part of Asia, and quite frankly, Asia basically shits all over us. And fostering a love for science and things like that, in my opinion, starts when you are a small child. It starts with dad sitting down, or mum sitting down, or whoever sitting down with you, and getting a light bulb and a battery and a bit of wire and showing a young child, look at this. They don't understand all the electrons, and even I don't understand it, but fostering in them an understanding for that, I believe, sets up society for a much brighter future, because all of the wonderful solutions to our problems exist now in those children who haven't even thought of these concepts yet, but they need to have their minds open to them. Yeah. I don't understand a lot. So I interviewed Professor Rob Morrison for one of my shows. In Australia, there was a show called The Curiosity Show, and I watched it as a child. Yeah,
I was fat. Yeah, I heard that. I heard that interview with him. It was great.
Yeah, and I was fascinated by what they did. And it even though I didn't go on to become a scientist, I still had a deep appreciation for what people do to make our lives better. And you do have some sort of scientific approach to how you rule your life. Now, it burns me up that in my child's primary school, half an hour a week is given to a bunch of, I shouldn't use the word, but a bunch of fools who come in who want to tell the story of little baby Jesus and that invisible man in the sky who's everywhere at every given time. And it burns me up, because school is about learning. I mean, school should be about fun. School should be about a bit of nonsense too. That's great. But what happens in the classroom to a child, because you tell your children, look, you may not like school very much, son, but when you go there, I want you not to do what dad did. Please don't follow. Do as I say, don't do as I do. But I want you to listen to what goes on in that classroom, and I do want you to absorb as much of it as you possibly can. Then you have to turn around to your child and say, however, when these clowns come, I'm going to exempt you from that class, because That ain't learning, boy. That's a load of crap.
Yeah.
And it should not be going on in a state-based school. That's the thing that bugs me. I don't have a problem with that, and I've bumped into them in the foyer and stuff, and they haven't known that I'm one of the parents that takes my child away from them. And I know actually now some of them through other means. And I even occasionally go into their opportunity shop, which of course other atheists will say, how dare you give them money because you know what they do. But I say, yeah, but sometimes they get cool things that are cheap. And the point being is it doesn't matter how much money you give them. If you don't believe it and you have clarity of mind, it doesn't matter what happens.
She'll be riding 6 white horses, she'll be riding 6 white horses, she'll be riding 6 white horses when she comes.
Excuse me,
Come on,
are you the singing bush?
Follow the sea with a yeah-ho, we'll blow the man down. Oh, pay attention and listen
Let me
to
talk
me.
to him.
It makes
Excuse
sense
us,
and
are you the
blow
singing
man
bush?
down. Yeah-ho, blow the man down. Yeah-ho, blow the man down.
Hello?
Yeah-ho,
Hi.
blow the man down.
Hi.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
Excuse us!
Good night, lady.
There won't be any churches if enough people come to the conclusion that they're being sold a load of horse shit.
Well, that's where the strategy comes for getting into schools and talking to kids.
Yeah.
You sort of wire their plastic brain as it's developing to think a certain way, and being raised that way, I'm sure you understand that certain ideas are hard to get out of the instinct part of your brain.
Well, you don't get rid of them because I've said before, as much as I think of myself as being free from the shackles of religion, I would be terrified to sign a contract with the devil. And I know it's illogical, and I say it to a lot of my guests and people. I know it is illogical, but if you put that piece of paper and parchment in front of me and you say, you don't believe in any of this horseshit, and I would say, no, I don't, then just sign this contract to the devil, because it doesn't mean anything, does it? And yet I would still feel a sense of trepidation doing it. And it is because that virus was put into me when I was young. And so I'm still...
That's why you're not a famous musician like Alice Cooper.
That's exactly right. And that annoys the hell out of me. I mean, I could have had a much better life than I've had. I would have burned in hell for all eternity. But, that's a small price to pay for...
and remember, if you do it, you have to use your blood. Don't forget that. Otherwise, it's a waste.
Well, I do know that, but I am on blood thinners, so at least it would go into the fountain pen quite easily. But,
there you go.
But I mean, I look at my son, and when I found out, I didn't know this was even going on in state schools, because if you're not a parent of a child, you don't necessarily know this stuff is going on. It's only when you enroll your child there and you think, oh, good, I'm not sending him to a religious school. Good, because I support state education. And then you find out they're there, and it's like, I don't believe this. Is this really happening?
Yeah, in this day and age.
In this day, yes.
We had a guest on just a couple months back. His name Renee, and he had to go to in Canada here. He had to go to all the way up to the Human Rights Commission in order to get them to stop distributing Bibles in grade 5.
Yeah. And then we talked about. I
heard that show. Yep.
We talked about a similar situation where at my children's school, after hours, they have a Baptist church rent out classroom space and then hand out little flyers to the children who are already members of that congregation to hand out to other students in their classes to try and get them to come to like a Bible club.
Yep. It's called grooming. You know that, don't you? It's really called grooming, where you send other children out to lure children in. It's worked for the Catholic Church for years, but see and it bugs me because it happens with my son, where they'll all still have their little Jesus loves you badges, and they get little presents and lollies and which are confectionery, in case you don't know the word lollies. And it is insidious, and it does create in the playground, you're going to hell because your parents aren't letting you do this, and we've told we're going to heaven, you're going to hell. So you get this two-tiered sort of thing going on, and that pisses me off. It pisses me off greatly, because I don't have a problem with any of my children studying religion. But I don't want a 5-year-old in his first year of school to have it rammed down his throat, because a 5-year-old at that point is very keen on the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and all of those things. It's a stage where you are so impressionable that if it's entrenched in you, I think it's dangerous. Now, when my son, say, gets to his first year of high school, look, you want to get into the whole religious thing, please do. Go for it, because even if you come out the other end of it and you don't believe it, it is important that you have a knowledge of what you don't believe and why you don't believe it. There's nothing worse than ignorant atheists who just give you that's all fucking shit, mate. Don't fucking believe a word of it's crap. And I don't like that attitude either, because you have to know something of what it is you don't believe.
Right. Yeah. Exposure to different ideas is good, as long as you also teach critical reasoning and self-responsibility.
You basically just described right there my first introduction into this whole discussion took place on a web forum called Stickam, which was kind of like a camera docked up site, and the room was called Debate Faith, and the moderator, I guess you would say, of that board was went by the handle Atheists at Large. And essentially, as soon as somebody didn't agree with him for a long enough period of time, he would kick ban them from the room. And it's like, how are you having any dialogue? And if you were, even if you were on his team, so the non-believer team, he'd boot you from the room too. Now, he tried to boot me from the room 3 or 4 times. Luckily enough, I was skillful enough with changing my IP address to be able to get back in the room in less than 2 minutes, which really frustrated him. But
I take it you just like getting into fights with people from the sounds of it.
Oh yeah,
every now and then it's good.
It's not an all the time thing, but I mean, like with the kids' school thing, I started kind of getting a little frustrated with the principal that this is an educational institution. Even if it's after hours, these kids are taking what they're learning in this place, and their mind is saying, this is being taught to me here. This is an education.
The awful thing in Australia, in Victoria, where I am the state of Australia, is that and both sides of politics are complicit in it. That's what really makes me laugh. The left side of politics and the right side of politics both have allowed this to go through, which I don't find as shameful from the right side of politics, because they are churchy. I expect it from them.
Yeah, the left's a little stranger.
I find it very reprehensible from them, and I do get into arguments with some of my more leftist friends who still see the left side as a glowing doyen of political fairness and stuff. And I basically say, you're being sold a pup. The Labor Party that we know now is actually a load of horse shit on what it should have been. But the thing that really gets me is, I say, both sides have sold it. Now, in schools, there have been some headmasters. The law is so sewn up for them, right? You are a headmaster. Imagine you are a headmaster of a school. Now, when you're approached by a local representative of Access Ministries, they say, we'd like to come to your school and implement the religious studies. You are actually not allowed to say no. You are told at that point, when you look up how the Act works, you don't have a choice. They offer you this service, and it's like, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse, because you can't say no.
And if
really if you do say no, they take you to the education department, and then you get disciplined. So you have no choice. And I cornered our headmaster. I think he's fairly churchy anyway, but I actually got him to admit it. I said, yeah, but you didn't have a choice, did you? Because what he said was, no, well, this is one of the things we like to offer at the school. And of course, you're free to take your child out. And I said, yes, but it's one of the things as you say, you're carefully saying you like to offer, but you didn't have a choice. They approached you and you had to say yes. Now, I know you're of a mindset where you would have accepted them in anyway, but you actually didn't have a choice, did you? And he said, well, no, I didn't. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I know the other sheeple who are parents, and a lot of the parents are sheeple. Most of the parents that attend my child's schools, many of them are from dare I say, a lower socioeconomic bracket. Oh, dear God. But, and so, they've got lots of neck tattoos and piercings, and I think some of them lead quite shameful lives, to be quite honest, but they don't invite me to their parties, because I think they see me as a little upper echelon. I don't know why. I'm very low brow, but, most of them don't believe a word of it either. But you try getting and talking to them. You try saying to them, look, you let your kids do it. Yeah, I'll let my kids do it. Yeah, fucking oath I do. But you don't believe it. Nah, it's all fucking shit, isn't it? But it teaches them, how to behave, bit of decency. You say, fuck it, who cares? It's all right. I don't care if they 10 Commandments. It's all shit.
Yeah,
let them do it.
It's amazing. I have a couple of friends in particular who are atheists. They're extremely intelligent, but they have not, this is the difference, they have not really challenged themselves beyond the point of, oh, it sounds ridiculous and I don't think it's true. And so they don't see any danger in, for instance, their children going to religious schools. And I've tried explaining, and they get really sensitive about it too, because their spouse is religious, right? And they're very defensive. And I'm like, look, once that gets ingrained in your child, don't be surprised.
You won't get it out.
Don't be surprised if your child one day looks at you and goes, "Oh, you're going to burn in hell."
Well,
what are you going to do then?
Has happened.
Yeah,
that has happened here, and that's what I say to them. And so in the end, I look at some of their complacency and I think, well, you kind of deserve what you get. So in the end, I found myself burning with rage over Access Ministries coming in, but then I kind of expect it from those people because their job is to evangelize. I'm more cross with the parents who just blindly, some of them even complain. They say, yeah, I think I might pull my child out. And then the next time you see,
it's almost like,
did you do it? And they'll say, no, I didn't do it. I didn't get around to it. You know?
It's a confusion, in my opinion. It's a confusion between being a parent with rights and a parent's responsibilities. Like when they just go, well, this is my kid, so shut up. That's now, you're treating your kid like a pet or a possession. You know, if someone says they have a concern that might affect your children, you should at least hear out the argument, because that's what a parent does.
Yeah, and look, I have discussions with my child. I mean, he's 8.5 now. Great parent I am. I don't know how old he is. But I know from the level of conversations that I can have, and he's a clever child. He's got a filthy temper. He needs a backhander, but we're not allowed to do that anymore. But I have conversations with him regarding the invisible man in the sky, etc. And sometimes he'll bait me because he'll say, yeah, but what if I do believe it, Dad? What are you going to do about that? And I say, well, it's up to you. You know how I feel about it, so don't try and bait me where you think you're going to upset your old man by saying you do believe in God, because it just won't work with me. But I know from having the level of conversation that I've had with him, because he was exempt from the time he started. So I've had many conversations with him as to why he doesn't do it. So it's not swept under the carpet, and it's always been one of those things. When you're older, you'll be able to do whatever you damn well want.
Yeah.
But this is basic. In that classroom, this is basically what they're going to teach you, okay? So I sat down with him, gave him, a most basic understanding of Christianity, and this is what they will expect you to believe, and this is, baby Jesus, this, that, and the other, and God did this, and et cetera, et cetera. I said, that's what they're going to be teaching in there, okay? So you're not missing out what's going on in that class, because I'm actually telling you what they are teaching those children. The difference is, I'm not telling you that it's real and that you have to believe it. The difference is those children in there are being told this is 100% real.
Yeah.
They're being told that this is as real as when a teacher says, what's 2 + 2 and you say 4. It's on that sort of level. Now, so I have tried to, I hate the thought of raising an ignorant child. I expect him to come to me later in life and debate me to the point of frustration. I do expect that to happen. And as I say, I don't have a problem with the people that teach it as such. They're entitled to their own personal belief. I'm not a person who goes around saying to someone, oh, you're religious, are you? Well, you're fucked because you're an idiot. Because most of them aren't idiots. And I don't have a problem. Go to church. You'll never see me outside your church picketing your church, ever. You'll never see that. I just have a problem when you cross the line and you start coming into the school and putting it about. And I say it to so many of those parents, and they annoy me way more than the actual religious people who are in the school. They annoy me by their complacency.
Well, it's like you say,
they piss me off.
It's also like you say, some of them you can tell that they should know better, and they just don't seem to give a shit.
No, that's right, because they even get fired up about it, and then you see them later, and oh no, I didn't. I didn't want to go into the head mail. I'll have to sign a form, and I sort of thought about it. And like, if my kids come to me, I can always answer their question in a way. Like, it's sort of good they're being taught it. Really, in a way, maybe you should consider letting your son do it, because aren't you? When you really think about it, right? Aren't you just imposing your beliefs on him? And it's like, no, I'm not imposing my beliefs on him at all. I'm saying that these children's brains have not formed to the point that they can critically reason anything. These are children at that age, when told to go and brush their teeth, will throw themselves on the floor and have a tantrum. Now, when you can't read...
I was going to say, just what you're talking about there, Smashlock here had a counter proposal for that school that his children go to. And I thought it was pretty reasonable that he wanted to introduce a class after school hours on critical reasoning for any children that were parents wanting to send their kids. And so their question was, "What's your qualifications?" Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
What are your qualifications? And I says, as opposed to a woman who has done nothing but sit in a church pew for 30 years.
Yes, that's the thing. To be trained as an Access Ministries person in school is a whole one-day course, I believe, once a year.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to have. Now, people here have tried that. The humanists have tried it. In Queensland, there is an alternative. I think the schools have let them in. But that's the problem we face in Victoria, where they then say, we can't just let you come in here and teach that sort of thing. That'll be brainwashing the children. But they don't see that the opposite side of the coin is that's what they're doing. I did like, however, my school did take it on, and I was very happy. My son came home one day with a worksheet, which I thought had come from the religious crazies. And so I think the headmaster has taken on board people like me who go in and debate with him and annoy him. And they are using ethics-based learning for the children who are now not in that class. Because my son brought home the worksheets, and there was a thing about a giant in school, and how the giant was the giant and all the other students were little, and how the giant got excluded, and what can we do to respect people who are different than us? What can you do to be more friendly towards people? How do you think it feels if you were the giant and you had no friends? And I picked it up and it said on the back, it was some sort of ethics training. So the headmaster of my school has obviously cottoned on to that, and they've taken it aboard themselves. So obviously some teacher there is conducting some sort of alternate thing, and they haven't had to go outside for that. And I was very, very pleased. I thought that is great that they've taken it on board to do that.
To the earlier point there, though, that you're oppressing their beliefs or denying them the right to learn about a particular thing. I shield my children from a number of things. I don't let them watch pornography, for example. That's not me oppressing their right to learn about something, to learn about sex, or even about terribles. I think parents are expected to shield their children from things that are mentally and emotionally damaging. And if you
at least until an age where they're appropriately able to take on the responsibility.
And that's exactly right. And that's my argument too. That's what I've said all along. I'd be very happy for my son
let's
to
all
study.
Let's all just take note that Smashlock just compared religion to pornography.
They're very similar, aren't they? They're very similar. It's all about releasing bottled up tension.
That's right. One bottles it up, and the other one helps you release it.
That's exactly right. First you go out, you sin, then you go into that little box in the confessional, and hopefully they've got tissues in there, and you hear the priest on the other side when some rather horny-looking woman's telling him how she sinned, and all you can hear, she said, "Father, could you answer me there?" And all you can hear is...
One box to wipe away your tears, the other one to clean your hands.
I didn't hear you, my dear. Say it again slowly.
Yes, just say it a little more slower. And they would have had to have got serious stiffies. I mean, if you're supposedly celibate and some woman is telling you about her most horrid details of the things she's got up to, you could, I mean, if you're a heterosexual way, I suppose. I don't know how many Catholic priests are. I suppose some of them must be. I've not met too many, but I'm sure some of them must be. You'd have to be getting your rocks off in there. There's no two ways about it. But
lean a little bit closer and repeat that.
Say it in a more sultry voice. More sultry.
Yes. So with a bit of what they call vocal fry. Now that's the thing with Paris Hilton. They kind of talk in the vocal fry. I can't remember where we were now, but it was important. So people say, well, how dare you deny that in that circumstance? And I turn to those people in the school thing and I say, well, there are no shortage of Sunday schools. Okay, so this shouldn't be going on in my school. They should be teaching these children an interest in science because we are so far behind in that area in our country. And on Sunday, should you be bothered to get over your hangover because you've all had some sort of pagan party the night before, don't be lazy and expect the school to teach your children about religion. Should you somehow feel that, get up off your ass and take them to Sunday school, okay? And I won't have a problem. I won't stand outside your Sunday school demanding that they teach science.
Or even better yet, they can open up their fucking Bible and read it for a change, because we all know that they don't fucking do it.
No, that's right. And this is what goes on with these parents. I look at them and I think, you wouldn't have a clue what's in there. Now, admittedly, I haven't read the Bible from cover to cover either. I've tried, but my eyes kind of glaze over when it's
the begats. It's the begats, right?
Yeah, the begats. You get to the begats and you're basically fucked. But I did have a pretty good indoctrination for 4 years at that school, and there are passages and things that I have read. Plus, I just cheat and listen to a lot of other people that do know it better than I do, and it appalls me, as I say, when people say, "Oh yeah, but it is good." You say, "Well, how do you know it's good?" Well, it is. It's the Bible, isn't it? It's got stuff in there, and I don't disagree entirely with them. There are some great stories in there that do have a tale of morality. It's not all bad. There are things in there that are good, like in any work of any any sort of book can have things in there that you can't say is all bad. There are things in there that are good. There are little tales in there that, like, as they say, most metaphors don't bear close examination. Okay, so, but there are things you could take away from that, and it should be revered as a book of the human race, because it is something that came about. There's no need to go and burn it, but you just need to put it into. Unless
you're freezing to death at the side of the road in the winter.
Oh well, then Jesus saves, because you'll be warmed. And look, and if you want to look at that, I mean, there are some great things there. Do unto others as you would have do. I mean, that's just the basic notion of karma. And I look at.
But as an atheist, you're able to look at that. This is the way I do. And you understand that those traditions don't just come from the Bible. The Bible just happens to have a few of them captured within there.
That's exactly right, as do other works of literature.
Right.
We only draw from the world around us. Yes, we create new little bits and pieces, but none of us come from a position of absolute uniqueness. Everything we know, we've learned from somewhere else. Everything that us human beings know, we learned from the humans before us. We add to it, and there are new things that we get, but everything is based upon what has been. Yeah. Some stuff gets thrown out because you overturn it. Science is very good the way it's self-correcting. And finds better ways. But if you hadn't had those ways in the first place, you wouldn't have what you have now. And none of us live any longer than 100 years at best. So all of the knowledge we know now has been handed by people who are no longer here. So I don't have, like I say, I don't have a problem with people studying the Bible, the Quran, whatever. That's fine. The Torah, go for it. Take away some things if you can, and they're good. The notion of karma, do unto others. I do believe in karma, but I don't believe it as a metaphysical sort of like, oh, wow, man. Karma to me is about the nicer we are to each other, the better the world will be. If somebody does you a good turn and you've been down on your luck with your ass out of your trousers, and then you from the help that someone gives you, 10 years later, you see someone who's in trouble, and you remember back, I remember when I was that person, I'm going to help this person now. Yeah. You make the world a better place by educating children in poor countries. The next Einstein could be a little baby right at the moment who is living in the most abject poverty. Yeah. And if we don't nurture and give that child a chance, we are losing stuff in the world. So I do believe in a sense of karma in that thing. We can't all be selfish. We do have to give. Sometimes we even have to compromise our principles a little. I can't knock everything the Salvation Army does. I don't like some of their things because they are a bit of a cult. Well, they're actually a rather large cult, but
they're organized into official ranks like the military.
Yeah, well, they are a cult. There's no two ways about it. But through having a young child, when my son was born when I was 40, and my wife of the time used to take little Junior to their little things because they used to put on, not child-minding things, but stuff for young mums. And because I was not a working dad as such, I used to go along to a lot of those things. which was quite fascinating because I do like to immerse myself in other things. I didn't know that much about the Salvation Army. So even though I'm stepping through the door and I don't believe a bloody word of it, I'm still looking at these people and saying, what makes you tick? Why are you who you are? And I know they're indoctrinating the kids because they'd be having their little music groups and stuff. And every, say, fifth or sixth song would be, okay, here we go. Now we're working in the baby Jesus here. But I look at some of the mums and some of the people who weren't going to get out of the house if they couldn't go there. They didn't have a lot of money, and so therefore it's just something that's put on. And of course, in the good old sunburnt land of Australia, we have a lot of natural disasters, and that's just not our politicians, but we do have massive floods, and we have bushfires and all sorts of horrible killer koalas that'll drop out of trees and kill you at a moment's notice.
Yes, Brian Allen knows all about those.
Yeah, we are. We live fraught with danger in this country. So, when it comes to a natural disaster, the Salvation Army are very, very quick to mobilize. And they are there with the tea urns, the vouchers for food, handing cash to people. And it would take a very ardent atheist, if your house had burnt down, you were standing there in the tattered clothing with your children, and suddenly a Salvation Army officer walks up to you with an envelope with $500 in it, clothes your children, and gives you emergency accommodation. It would be very hard to turn around and say, I don't believe a word in it, you cultist bastard. Leave me alone. I'd sooner stand here in the ashes and smoke. And I think that's sort of what Billy Bragg was getting on about. So I can see how people do see the atheist movement as being a bit arrogant, because none of us can mobilize that sort of commitment. I understand the Salvos do it on a flawed principle. Because I believe in the invisible man in the sky, and I believe in Jesus Christ as my savior, I'm going to dedicate myself to helping people. Now, that's that old thing about faith moves mountains. If I get a bunch of people together with shovels and I tell them, we've got to move this mountain, you've got to take it apart shovel by shovel, wheelbarrow it out. When you get to where the other side of that mountain is, there's a most wonderful celestial reward for you all. Now, let them dig away the mountain. They get to the other side and turns out there isn't a reward. Well, it is the faith in their minds that moved the mountain, even though, unfortunately, when they got there, it was a load of shash. So I do understand the thing about faith moving mountains. The sad thing about faith, though, is that it can turn and can be ugly and horrible.
Oh, yeah.
It can foster people to fly planes into buildings, to blow themselves up. It can foster people to be, like when you see the right-wing sort of Christians in the good old USA who don't want universal health care, who don't want to help their fellow man, and yet they will preach on about what a wonderful fellow Jesus was, and yet they're the most nasty. Well, I dare not use the word Tea Party, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. The Sarah Palins who will be, oh, God is so great, but yet they'll be so fucking horrible to people.
Me in there?
Yeah, I hear you.
That's the 1 minute promo.
Yep.
Nev Septic Sucking Service.
Yep.
Dumb Down Atheist Podcast.
No, not podcast, son. It's for the wireless. You think small. That's your problem. All right, give us the oi. Go on.
Okay, counting back from 10. You ready? 10, 9, 8.
Oh, bloody shut up and start the thing, will you? A number 1, a number 2, and a 3, and a 4. If your bathroom's on the blink, don't squeeze it down the sink. When I'm pumping out your dunny, I'm in the land of milk and honey. I'll take away your waste, and I'll do it at great haste. Call Nev Septic Sucking Services.
How dare you give people care when they're sick? Don't you know Jesus?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. They'll preach Jesus, but they somehow lose the plot. So it's like what I'm saying with the Bible. I'm saying that that there are people out there who are enormously good, who do very good things, and they overlook the Leviticus passages, and they overlook a lot of stuff. And I find it very hard to be nasty to those people.
Well, look, when I was a born-again Christian into my 20s, right, I was almost always one of those Christians that people thought the same thing. He's a nice guy. We really like him. But there's always, I can never be really good to other people in a number of ways until I got rid of those conflicts. And those conflicts are when you're, I went to school for theater. So I'd be sitting there with a couple of gay students, great people, and then in the conversation I'd have to tell them, like, they'd corner me just not intentionally, but they corner me, and I have to go, well, look, I have to tell you that the Bible says the way you live is sinful. It was just like so shitty. Just so shitty to say to somebody. You know, they didn't deserve it. And until I was able to get rid of those conflicts, that's what it's like. Just because you're a good person doesn't mean you're able to be a good person. Because you have
I keep getting the image of like the little Emperor Palpatine on your shoulder.
Yeah. Like, you want to tell them that it's wrong, don't you? Yes.
They must be destroyed.
And the thing is, though, in your haste to point out the error of their ways, you in fact were failing the Bible, because what you should have done was taken a rather large knife and killed them, because the Bible actually doesn't say you should.
Stones.
Yeah, well, that's right. You should kill them. And so, if you want to follow Christianity to the letter, and this is where I put arrogant atheists in, who come across as bad. We have the conflicting thing of our arrogant, nasty atheists are the equivalent of the Westboro Baptists. And so, you know, the Westboro Baptists, whether we like it or not, follow the Bible way more closely than a whole lot of so-called Christian people.
Do you really think that they're equivalent, though? I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you really think that the most arrogant of atheists, the most militant of atheists?
No. I'm just saying on the extreme ends. Ours aren't as bad as the Westboro Baptists. But in a way, I mean, you look at some of our arrogant ones that will shout people down, exclude them, refuse to even acknowledge that someone else's point of view might have some form of validity, or doesn't have validity but still deserves to be listened to. Then you're getting into the realms of sort of Westboro Baptists in the fact that they do the same thing. You can't debate the Westboro Baptists on any point, because their minds are shut, and they're just like, it doesn't matter what you say.
And this is what you
are wrong.
This is what you were talking about before. It's more frustrating from an atheist, especially from someone who says they're a skeptic, is because at least with the Westboro, they can hold this old book that they don't really understand and go, we have these few verses that we like to recite, and it tells us to say this. But with the atheists, it's when someone gets bent out of shape, like, and they start saying all kinds of nasty shit, like, I am right and you're worthless shit. And they're doing that in public, representing the rest of us. That really pisses me off.
And that's what I'm saying.
Bring the facts, bring the data. That's what people want to hear from an atheist.
Yes,
like,
it's way more reprehensible from them, because at some point they've bragged on about how they're a free thinker.
Yeah.
Whereas the Westboro Baptists are basically scum of the earth, which we know they are. But in a way, they get more of a pass in my mind, because that's what you expect from them. Yeah. And it's the same as I said with Access Ministries. I used to hate their guts, but then I ended up hating the lackadaisical parents more, because should the parents band together and everyone exempt their child, they'd have the Access Ministries would have no one to teach. So we would defeat them straight away by us being resolute, and they'd have no children in the classroom because every child would be exempt. They would give up. They would say, there's no point us staying at this school. We might as well go to one down the road, because 99% of the parents have already taken their children out. So that's what I'm saying. So from the Westboro Baptists, I don't expect any better, although I must say Shirley Phelps's daughters are fucking hot. They are hot. I've seen them interviewed. My God, there's a couple of them are absolute knockouts. Shirley Phelps may have been a bit of a looker in her day, but she's kind of like Africa now. You know it's there, but you're not in a hurry to go there. But so I do expect it. And this is just my opinion, because they're all lawyers, so guess who don't sue. But I still think old Fred is probably harbouring a few little, shall we say, self-doubts about his own sexuality, which is why they're so vehemently anti-homosexual. Now, I can't prove that, and it's not true. It's just a bandied opinion. And if this is heard in the American states, we do have a right of free speech. We don't have it in Australia, but you can't sue me under American law for saying that. So I don't expect any better from them. But I think if you really want to look at a more literal interpretation of the Bible, I think they're closer than any other. I do think that, because they do literally take it word. They do believe in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And I think if, as they said, if they got power, they would make homosexuality a capital offence, and they would put you to death.
And but while we still have you, though, I also want to ask you about
you want to have me, do you? Oh, I see. We've almost talked about Fred Phelps'
right.
Go on. Ask me something.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. You've changed my life. I know you love music. I think you've been talking online about you're producing some more music.
Yes. I hadn't written a serious song for over 10 years. I've written a lot for my character, who's part of my podcast, used to be on Radio 2, my friend Nev from Nang Warri.
Yeah.
I find Nev's stuff was easy to write. And actually, Nev's stuff actually is quite sad if you really listen to some of the stuff. But he's such a hapless character that it makes it funny. But in the last few weeks, I've been quite surprised that finally some sort of door has opened, because I have been socializing in some pretty funky circles, and that may have something to do with it now that I'm off the leash, as it were. So was that your only, you have asked that. It's an interesting thing. When I was younger and I was more sort of spiritual and believed there was a purpose in the universe, I used to think that writing songs came from another place. Like even an old drugged out reprobate like Keith Richards was once interviewed, and he says, it's like I'm a vehicle, man. Like I sit down to write the songs. It's like, a gateway opens in my mind, and I'm like connected to something, and they just come through. I don't know how. And that's a funny thing. I think if you're like an artistic sort of person, and I wish I was, you can't help sometimes feeling that sometimes when things like that come, that they all almost are from another place. And it's illogical and it's irrational to think that way. And I think for some point in time, I used to think, well, a few profound things happened. 9 years ago, I stopped smoking cigarettes and I stopped smoking marijuana. And I used to feel that, I probably won't ever do anything creative again, because being stoned on dope, marijuana dope, not petrol.
You always feel like you're the most creative person in the room.
Yeah, you do, man. Your mind takes on tertiary. It's like listening to that album, A Child's Garden of Grass. And it takes a while to get your life together, because you sit in your studio and you think, I used to sit in here and I used to be shit-faced. Now I'm really straight. So I've got all these triggers in my mind where I should be rolling a rather big, fat, feckin' joint. I do like music. It does do things to me.
What kind of music have you been listening to?
I listen to all sorts of music. I listen to just about everything.
Have you ever heard Priest by Stephen Lynch?
No, I haven't. See, I haven't listened to that.
That's a particularly horrendous song geared towards Catholic priests. It's actually quite funny. He's a musical comedian.
Okay, all right. Well,
I think it's like... altar boy, confess your sins to me. You can play my organ all night long. You promise never to tell.
Have you ever seen Father Ted, the comedy show Father Ted?
No.
Well,
I've heard of it though.
You should. It was made in Ireland, which just goes to show just how much Ireland has changed. And it was I think it was about 3 series is made, and it centers around Father Ted Crilly, who accidentally put a lot of church funds into his own private account, and he got sent to Craggy Island, where they banished the priests. And he has his sidekick, which is Father Dougal Maguire, who's like, well, basically he's not just one sandwich short of a picnic, he's the complete basket short of the picnic. And then this old drunken priest who never really says much other than he's just in an alcoholic stupor, so all he'll ever say is, "Thick girls, ass, tits!" And and then it's all the other priests that come to visit them at the island, and it is really funny. It's a really funny show. And there's this one where this one priest was there, and they had this rebellious priest, and he turned to the other and he goes, "I know why you like watching the sports. You like watching the boys in the shorts, don't you?" And the other priest starts to get all nervous. He goes, "Oh, I know you do, you dirty bastard." It's really worth seeing. It is funny. It's really, 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 really funny. And the guy who played Father Ted Crilly died shortly after of a massive heart attack. So it does prove that God will strike you dead.
He won't help the needy, but if you fuck with him.
Yeah, that's right. And something else, and we'll get off the subject of music, because music is just music. Who cares about music? I read something on my last podcast by the Monty Python team. They made Life of Brian. And they're more or less saying now that in this day and age, they couldn't make Life of Brian anymore. They don't want to poke fun at religion. And saying that they certainly wouldn't dare do it about Islam because they're terrified that they would all get killed, which I found.
You mentioned that to me. I called in for that show.
Yeah, that's the show. That's right. And so I found that rather perplexing.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I don't know if I agree with that either. I think that they have other reasons. I think that have molded that perspective.
Yeah, I thought they were just lazy and didn't want to write any more new material. One of my listeners, I think, has taken me to task on it. I'll read it on the next show, saying that, had it not been for Eric Idle coming up with the Universe song, he wouldn't have the interest in science. And I suppose I was a little glib at picking on Monty Python because I do like them. And the Universe, or the Galaxy song, as it's called, is brilliant. Even though Eric Idle did years later have to change the lyrics because he was sort of wrong about a few things. He had to consult, that science dude who's really famous, who used to be in that band D-Ream, Things Can Only Get Better. Why can't I think of his name? He's very famous, very, very famous. And if I had my other computer that didn't blow up on me, I'd be able to check it now, but I can't. So you know who I mean. Things Can Only Get Better, which he said later obviously was scientifically wrong because we have degradation. It goes in the opposite direction. But he said,
Entropy,
what did I know?
Yeah. Actually, one of our guests, his new album, he called himself Entropy Man and compared it to our anxieties around death.
That's right. You see, there's so many more intelligent people than me you could be talking to for this podcast. I just think that you feel you owe me because you've been on mine a couple of times.
No, you're really good at not taking yourself too serious, but you have a unique show, and those followers you have will grow.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They are crazy, and I'll admit you are a little crazy yourself, but I like it. That's the way I like it.
Send some of them our way.
Well, they're the sort of people I'd cross the street to avoid, quite frankly. Some of those people get involved. I sort of think I don't know what sort of thing I've attracted to myself.
Well, but see, I've mentioned you in conversations on our show before to a couple of people. And,
I've heard you talk to Brian. You were talking about me to Brian Allen. I heard that.
Yeah, and I remember one time, I can't remember who I was talking to, but one time specifically I pointed out that when you had me on the show, I think originally you thought you'd have a couple of quick jokes with me. But, I can tell that you are a well thought out person. You don't think so highly of yourself that you're going to come out and start educating everyone like you're, better than they are. No,
because I'm not better than they are. And I was talking to my daughter, and I said, I have to admit I'm a bit of an emotion junkie. I enjoy it's probably bad to say it about yourself, but sometimes I enjoy my lows as much as my highs. And
use that for your new music, because that's, I'm told, where...
Yeah, well, I think that's it. I think you have to be very in touch with that stuff to get that stuff out. But yeah, I look on the show, that is the kind of thing. I think my thing is sometimes through jokes and stuff, if I can sort of, I guess, stimulate people into perhaps searching for their own things, that maybe someone will come back one day and say, you remember that when you said this and that, the other, and you were bewildered about it? I went off and looked it up, and this happened and that happened, and thanks for putting that in my head. It kind of drove me mad, and now I worked it out. So because I admit I don't have the answers. I look at the world and I know there are a lot more stupid people than me out there. And I try to suffer fools gladly these days and not be cutting and terrible to them. But I realise there's an awful lot of people that know a heck of a lot more. And, it's...
sorry, out of curiosity, what kind of music? Like, do you write instrumental music, or do you sing? Like, what is it that you do?
Generally, they will be songs. They'll be words with some sort of story. I don't...
No, but I meant, like, did you write instrumental music, like write guitar chords, or did you write actual songs? And you answered that with their words and stories.
Well, it depends. Well, okay.
The music Sorry, I was gonna say the music I've heard from you too. It's not generally like the stuff that I put out that's done with electronic sounds and stuff like that. Yours is actual. You prefer the acoustic. You prefer having almost like I don't know. It's something like I would like to hear if I were sitting having a drink. That's the type of music I'd like to hear.
Well, I have access to all of it. I've got my studio split off into two things. So there are keyboards and drum machines hooked up to a computer down the other side. So I can come up with lots. Well, there was a song that Nev had when he went to a clubbing where he's tripping off his brain because he
It's the Spanish Nut Jam! When I met ya,
This about Auntie Nora, Uncle Nev.
said I never would forget ya. Yeah, no, that's right, yeah. But I let you slip away, and I regret that every day. 'Cause now I'm all alone, like a dog without his bone.
Oh, Uncle Nev, that sounds a bit rude.
Oh, Nora, Nora, Nora. Your appeal goes to the Cora. You're the apple of me eye, love. Never be another. Nora, Nora, Nora. You're the one I'm rooting for.
Oh, that has a different meaning in Australia, Uncle Nev.
Oh, Nora, Nora, Nora.
Yep, we're back.
Yeah, so I do have access to that. There was a song that's on there with Nev, and that's full-on electronic. That is meant to be like a techno dance thing, so I can do all that. And then the other stuff that you hear, which is more earthy with me playing real instruments, sometimes is because I'm incredibly lazy, and to go over to the machines over there and program all the drums from .1 and then have to program all the bass lines and all the instrumental bits drags out, and I'm stuck there for days and I can't get away from it. So sometimes I think, sod that, just play the guitar, play the bass myself off a real bass, go get the rice tin full of rice and just do shakers and hand claps and stuff, because you can get really weighed down with it. So I walk between the two fields, but I always have way more respect for people that can actually really play an instrument. I mean, this is the thing, when I hear the Kanye Wests, and now that is my new insult, don't be a Kanye, you total Kanye, when he comes out and says he is a creative genius. No, he's a bullshit artist is what he is.
Yep.
He's a fortunate bullshit artist in the fact that he's been successful. But, I really think he should stop bitching, because with the tiny thimble amount of talent that he has managed to accumulate quite a bucket full of money, and he really should shut the fuck up, because basically in the English language, if you're a Cockney from London, he's a fucking tosser. And that's what I honestly think of him. He's a fucking tosser, because he's not a great creative force. He's just a very lucky person. And if you compare him to a Billy Joel, who was once a pop star himself, and you listen to songs like The Stranger or Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, that is a creative genius. That is a person who has learnt to play an instrument, has learnt the craft of songwriting, who can get up on stage with a shit-hot band of really good musicians and can sit down at that piano and can command a crowd. And he doesn't think of himself as being a creative genius. He thinks of himself as being someone, when he looks at his lyrics, he says, I came up with all these nice instrumental things, and my lyrics are the equivalent of spraying graffiti over a wall. So I listen to someone like Billy Joel say that about himself, and I think, are you fucking kidding me? Like, yeah, you've had pop songs that I suppose get a little irritating when you've heard them a million times on the radio, but...
I always admire people who are able to play instruments, because I can't. All I've ever been able to do is sing, and I remember I wrote a song for my engagement to my wife that she quite liked, and I just remember sitting there thinking, damn, I wish I could play a guitar, because this would just flesh this right out.
Yeah, look, the thing about it is a good musician, a good band will make things look very easy, and it's not easy. It simply isn't easy. It's that 10,000 hour rule that you've got to sit down with that, and it's like a painter. You can have natural talent, you can have abilities, but it is the 10,000 hour rule that you've got to sit down with those brushes and you've got to paint all the bad pictures before you come up with the good ones. And the same thing goes with playing an instrument, and the same thing then goes if you're going to take it to another level and think that you can make a living at it. It's not simple, and I have enormous respect for some of the people who do things. Bass players like Leland Sklar, who's played on everybody's album ever since, is a person who is of that nature. There are so many good people out there, and I do get despaired when I hear the current state of the top 40, and I think, holy crap, I sound old, but a lot of this stuff is shit. It really is.
It is.
People like Kanye West, a lot of them, when they go to their Grammys and get their awards and stuff, they really should take the computer from the studio they recorded in, and the computer should get the Grammy award for producing the album. Because
that's like the stuff that I do. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I can do that stuff on my computer. Yeah. And then the only difference is he's got a huge release behind it, and he thinks he's a god for doing it.
Yeah. And look, there are more people who are at the forefront of electronic music. A lot of the music that people listen to now, the techno-y sort of stuff, once upon a time was considered alternative. And you had the early exponents of electronic music, the people like Kraftwerk and Brian Eno, and a lot of those people were dabbling with those machines at a time in their infancy, and they were way more creative than the bullshit that's there now. I don't have a problem with someone coming out with a full-on electronic stuff, but the more knowledge you have, the better you are. I don't have a problem like with the 80s, like someone like Howard Jones, who came out with stuff where he had all his machines hooked up. That's fine. I don't mind that. I embrace it myself. I've got all the stuff myself. It's just I don't like people standing up and saying that they're the best thing that ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
When really that might rub with younger people who don't know any different. But for some of us, when we hear it, it makes us vomit in our mouth because we think, oh, fucking get over yourself. You know, truly, get over yourself. Because I look at people like that and I think there's no room for growth with you anymore. You think you just know everything, and you don't. You don't know anything. In fact, you don't know jack shit. And I don't like the world that we have. Well, if I'm going to be bitchy, I don't like the Kardashian phenomenon. That bullshit. I'm not against reality TV per se. I think some reality sort of stuff is good because once upon a time they used to call that a documentary, but I despair of where a lot of it's going just because it's like now people are famous for being famous, and all right, there's always a bit of room for that. Okay, I don't mind that, but yeah, exactly, the honey boo boos of the world, and it just honey boo boo. Yeah, it's a worry. Let's hope it's a phase that will wear itself out, and we will get back to other things, because there are people out there who are doing very, very good things. It's just that
this is why a while back I sent you that as a pick me up, sort of, kind of that Annie Lennox song is just.
Oh yeah, that was great. That song.
Yeah,
it's what was it? The
Dark
Road, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that when I was growing up, my dad just introduced me to a wide range of music from
that's
Don
good.
McLean, Sean Phillips, Freddie Mercury, like Queen, he just. You know, I remember being in the car and just driving down the highway towards where we would go fishing and putting the tape into the cassette player and being like, empty spaces, what are we living for? And we'd fucking sing for 4 hours and we'd just go and go and go. And when I finally got to the age where like I started to explore the music of the time and with my friends, and I'd be like, this is what I listen to. They're like, what is this? These guys actually know how to play instruments.
What's this sound I'm hearing? And you're like, it's called quality.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's weird. What is that?
That's right. And then you pick up a real instrument and it sounds like a travesty, and you think, oh, gee, this is, wow. It's like watching a concert violinist make the most sweetest, beautiful sounds come out of that instrument, and then they hand it to you and you scrape the bow across the strings, and the RS, well, I don't know what the equivalent of the RSPCA is for you. I know the American one's the ASPCA, isn't it? The animal cruelty people turn up to what they wonder who's strangling that poor cat. It's me trying to play the violin. Sorry, your neighbours called in. We thought some animal abuse was going on.
We're going to arrest you. We're going to arrest you just the same because we hate what you're doing to that poor violin.
Yeah, crimes against humanity. But you mentioned Don McLean. Now, when I was a child, I was born in 1964, and I had my first radio when I was about the age of 4. I pestered my parents into it. I think they bought me a record player when I was 3 because I bothered them so much, and it was the first record player we ever had in the house. And I remember as a child hearing Vincent's by Don McLean.
Oh, Starry, Starry Night?
Starry, Starry Night.
Starry Night. That's my favorite, my daughter's favorite song.
Yeah, well, look, a couple of weeks ago, I've been ill for a long time and I haven't been able to go out and play. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually did go out and play, sitting down just at a market where some people were very generous and threw some money into my case. And that was a song, I actually haven't played that song for years, and for some reason I just started playing it, and I thought, gee, I hope I remember it. And a woman came up and said, oh, that was so beautiful, it was just so... So, yeah, Don McLean, I've seen him a couple of times in concert, and I guess over the course of time I sort of don't listen to him as much as I used to, because he's pretty churchy, that's the thing about him, he's very churchy, but... yeah, you know, people like that from the 70s, they were real players. I mean, you could see them, and someone like him, I mean, he can pick up the guitar and he can play the guitar. He can fingerpick that mother to really, at times, if you close your eyes, to actually make that instrument sound like an orchestra. I mean, that's how good he is at it.
But for Starry, Starry Night in particular, out of all of his songs, I found that to be one of the most lyrically beautiful and well-written songs, like the wording and the way he ties it all together. Yeah. I still like the climax of the song where, you know, he goes, and when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers often do. And I just remember just feeling the chills run down my spine as a child when my dad would play that song and we would sing it together. And it was like, wow, like for a song to invoke that kind of emotion, you have to know that it is extremely well written.
It must have been produced by Kanye West, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also that when No Hope Was Left on that Starry, Starry Night is the one bit where he has the diminished chord in the song, and that is a chill down the spine sort of song.
Mm-hmm. Really depressing when you take a step back and think about it. Like the lyrics are very sad, but it's so well written and so well said.
You know. Yeah. Portraits hung in empty halls, frameless heads on nameless walls with eyes that watch the world and can't forget, like the strangers that you've met, the ragged men in ragged clothes, the silver thorn of bloody rose. That song, and then, of course, he always, they would not listen, they did not know how. And, of course, in the last bit where he leads it out, they did not listen, they're not listening still, perhaps they never will. Yeah. And that is a cry from an artist that is saying, there's beauty in the world, but you're not seeing it. Mm-hmm. And that is so often the true plight of an artist. Paintings now that are priceless were worth nothing in the day the artist was alive. The artist was an outcast who was treated like crap. And then the future generations found their works and said, my God, these are the work of a genius. These must be placed into museums and stuff because these are now priceless.
Yeah, and now paintings that are being painted by, you know, men wearing flak suits, tossing buckets of paint in front of a jet engine or selling for $10,000 a pop. Like, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I see
the Kanye West of the art world.
but that is it. That is the situation. And I look at the computers and I say it to people. I said, we've never lived in a time where recording equipment has ever been better. Okay, if you have a computer set up like that, and you've got your keyboards and your sounds on board, and all the things you can do, and the unlimited amount of layering and tracks you can do. We should have music these days that is just absolutely superior to anything that's ever been, right? Except the problem is that the really talented people aren't given that equipment. It's the Kanye Wests that get that equipment.
Yeah.
So you go back to a time where music was played by real musicians, and often they had to sit around in a studio and they only had one track to record on, and that music is by far superior. You come through a time, as I say, where, you know, even a band like Queen did Bohemian Rhapsody. They did Bohemian Rhapsody on, I can't remember what it was a 12-track recorder or whatever. I think it was then they said that they recorded so much that the tape was almost losing it because they'd layered so many vocals and stuff. And even going back to the days of Buddy Holly and that, where the music was just by far superior, and yet the recording equipment was damn basic. It was really basic. And I think that's the thing that often when I have the other side of the studio there and I do use it, there are many times where I think, no, I'm just going to put stuff into my 16-track, which is digital, but it works along the lines of tape. So sometimes I will just strip it back and say, no, I'm going to record it as close to the way people used to record, which then tests your metal and so how you play, your intonation, knowing how to stick to the beats of the bar, knowing how to construct, and it takes a long time to learn how to do it.
I actually have to go here soon, but I will say on my final note, because we're talking about music, which is actually, aside from skepticism and atheism, a subject that I quite enjoy. I agree with you 100%. The state of music is just a sham right now. Like, auto-tune is used to make horrible singers who are pretty be able to sound like they actually are decent singers when I am shocked every time I hear a live recording of somebody who I would have otherwise thought was a fairly decent singer, and then it's like, wow. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I think I have a fairly decent voice, and I've practiced it for years, and I've been in a number of different choirs and whatnot. It was a cheap trip to Europe that I wanted to get, and I just wonder what would happen if somebody like me or like Aaron Walpole, he actually did very, very well on Canadian Idol. You take somebody who has actually talent, actual talent, and then pump them up with everything that you have available. But it's
and a passion for the music as well. That's another thing. Passion for the music as opposed to wanting to get their face on a goddamn poster.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's my argument. Let the incredibly talented people use the modern day equipment by all means, because it's always good to have that stuff. We shouldn't knock back what science has given us. And then the great litmus test for anything is go and see them play live, and you'll get a pretty good. You know, I love the Mavericks. That's the singer for the Mavericks, Raw Mellow, and the Mavericks are just a wonderful band. They take in. You know, they came through the ranks of country band, but they didn't really stay country for very long because Raw Mellow's Cuban by descent. So you just have these wonderful influences in the music, the Tex-Mex, the sort of Spanish sort of stuff. And he quite frankly, the two singers, in my opinion, that are the best singers that have ever been in the sort of popular genre are Roy Orbison. Roy Orbison had the most amazing voice, and there was a period of songs that he wrote that are just spine-chilling. He was Elvis's favourite singer, and there's no two ways about that. And even Don McLean covered Crying. And the second person is Raw Mellow from the Mavericks. Now, he would be
just really quick, Smash Lock has to go, I was going to say.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah, you have a good one. It was been absolutely amazing talk. So you
no worries.
No worries.
Farewell from the land down under, the land of sweeping plains and barbecues, son.
All right. You have a good one.
Yeah, you have a fair income day, buddy.
Little Johnny Blowhard was head of the land. He went out drinking with his old Uncle Sam. Sam spoke out about little Amsterdam. Johnny said, I got an S in my hand. This was his moment to shine. Turning back the clocks to 1949. Well, I'll pay for this one, Johnny. Although Johnny Blowhard's friends, they were few. In New Holland, they had changed all the rules. Now what you call it?
See ya.
Good on you, man. See you later. He's gone. Yeah, so, as I say, Raw Mellow, since I'd love to meet him. I'd absolutely love to meet him. And he would be number one if you don't count the dead people. I see dead people.
But, I've been meaning to talk to you about that, Rob. That's not normal, the dead people thing.
No, it's all right. It's when they start talking back and you can't get them out of your head that's the problem.
And then when they start telling you what products to buy, that's also
exactly. So if anybody in your listening audiences knows Raw Mellow, could you please send him my way, because I love singing his stuff. And
I was mentioning Annie Lennox. The reason I thought of sending that to you is just because when she was younger, obviously she exploded into a pop phenomenon, and her music was really great even back then. But there's something really nice about the fact that a lot of people don't know her later music, and it's still got such depth to it. You know, it's like she's mature because she loves the music. She hasn't stopped just because she's not popular, and I like that.
She started out the band The Tourists, and they did that cover of I Only Want to Be With You, which is how we first came to know her in Australia. She is enormously talented, and that song you posted was very good. Yeah. What I do have to do with Annie Lennox, however, is just distance myself from when she starts supporting Hamas. I find that a little...
I'm not familiar with all her political views, but she does strike me as very, very left.
She's a little wave. Yeah, she's kind of part of that socialist wave that for some reason seems to give radical Islam a pass. And I kind of... it's easy to Israel bash, and I know I risk opening my mouth and then people go, oh, I see you're one of those, are you? But I do have to say, it's a tiny little country surrounded by very hostile neighbours, and when people come out and sort of support Hamas and that, I kind of think, oh, geez, I don't know if I can really deal with that. Yeah. But what I've done with the lovely Ms. Lennox is I kind of just separate out that other stuff because, look, I mean, there's people might like my music, but might say, listen, we wish you'd shut the fuck up and just play the songs. Or the other way around, we're quite happy to listen to you joke on, but please don't play those god-awful songs anymore. But that was a very brilliant song. It was quite touching considering all the ups and downs that have been going on. And no, I doff my hat to you, sir, for posting that on my Facebook. So don't forget, folks, Robert Darby 902 on Facebook, Dumb Down Atheist Podcast on Spreaker.com or Stitcher, or find me on iTunes, or just find me on a dark night somewhere where I'm walking alone. And,
I'm also gonna put links to your stuff on the show notes.
Yes, that should get the hate mail coming in.
Well, I hope so. I'm going to try and get some of the hate mail that I should be getting stimulated at some point.
It's hard.
Until then, I'll ship it to you.
It is hard to kick it off in the podcast world because so many people have got the drop on us. I mean, you know, a podcast like No Agenda.
I think
Adam Curry is.
I think Reek Payton gets so much that I'm not really getting any right now.
Yeah, he gets a very healthy listenership, which is why I have to hijack his podcast so often, which is why I have to just lob on in there and drop a few bombs. But Reek Payton, I mean, from the Angry Atheist and Reepso Radio, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a good guy. I mean, he's friended. We've become quite good friends. We never met each other. But there've been a lot of people along the way who have been, you know, when I first launched into the whole thing, I thought, oh well, who knows what will happen. But there's been a lot of supportive people, and I guess some who aren't as supportive, but who cares? You know, Reap's been good, and we're kind of out there because we are the more opinionated ones. As I say, others are less opinionated and tend to walk the. I think that's what I was saying about George Hart before. He's a little more politically correct. He's a very talented guy, and I do like what he does. But of course,
I was disappointed to hear him on what podcast is that? American Free Thought, and he was saying that was when PZ Myers had just published that accusations that Michael Shermer was a rapist, and he was advocating that PZ was a hero for doing it, and I was like, "Wow!"
Oh, did he? Oh, right.
Yeah. And the show hosts were agreeing, like, "How are we ever going to root these guys out of our community if no one's willing to say anything?" Like, it's not a hard choice. Go to the cops, you know.
Yeah, so I was about to say we let the proper wheels of justice turn because, as the expression is, you're familiar with the expression "kangaroo court."
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess
do you actually have those in Australia? Do you have them?
We have thousands. What, kangaroos or kangaroo courts?
Well, I was hoping that there's courts with kangaroos. That'd be kind of entertaining, actually.
Well, our land of sweeping plains, which people believe is rugged wilderness, is very, very much being encroached upon by housing, and so we are actually getting the phenomenon now of kangaroos actually getting into the cities because their wilderness is being eaten up. Whereas people used to think they used to land in the airport in Australia, and the first thing we would say, "What do you think of Australia?" You know, they've been here 30 seconds. But now we are starting to, and they would think, I expected you Aussies to see kangaroos. I didn't see any. Well, now you've actually got a much better chance because they've got nowhere else to live. But
since they're becoming threatened in their livelihood out in the nature, so one negative brings up a positive.
Yes, but yes, the whole kangaroo court thing, I think, is a little over the top. I mean, hey, I don't know much about Michael Shermer. I live a long way away. I launched into my podcast, I suppose, not knowing a lot of things about a lot of people, but accusations of that nature held out like that, kind of are bad. And especially from someone like PZ Myers, who, see, yet again, he's someone who's intelligent, and then you sort of think
it's a double standard thing again, right?
Yeah. Why is this being done? Why are people being vilified in this way? You know, that's right. Go to the judiciary, take it up properly. This is a deplorable situation that. Look, I can understand stupid people coming out and making allegations. That's what you expect.
Exactly.
From stupid people.
And you know that PZ Myers knows better because if nothing else, if he had someone tell him something like that about a fellow professor at his university,
he would have discretion.
Yeah, he would have discretion because he knows he would risk losing his job and possibly get legal entanglement. Of course,
that's right.
Of course, so you know that.
That's right. So he would take it up through the proper means.
That's right.
He would report it. He would report it to the appropriate situation. Why go on the web and do it? Because the thing is, okay, if I want to play devil's advocate, and I don't know Michael Shermer, but let's assume, and I'm not saying he is, but let's assume he's guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just for a moment assume that he's, for argument's sake, by bandying that around on the internet, you're actually jeopardizing any fair trial that may go on. And that's the problem. Let's assume he was guilty, and then because you've slathered all this stuff around, it gets into a court of law, and his defense then get it all thrown out on the grounds that it's all been played out prior to where it should have been played out, and that is in a court of law.
I was just talking to Robert M. Price about this type of stuff, that we are all familiar, I think, very much with what pisses us off with the right. But this is the type of shit that pisses me off with the left, when people get dogmatic and ideological. It's like, well, of course we're right. Of course this is righteous. What? This is insane is what it is.
It is, and it smacks of the nastiness, like I said before, of how the atheist skeptical community is being viewed by the general public.
Yeah.
I know we shouldn't always just judge ourselves on what people think of us. And I'm a person who says of myself, what people think of me often is none of my business. But I do think it's very counterproductive. I don't think we're not going to win the ardent religious people over, but we have a chance of winning the people that are sitting on the fence to at least think more critically about the way they conduct their lives. And I think this sort of stuff that goes on, the elevator gates and all the shit that goes on and all the other stuff, does not help us one little bit. As for the whole elevator gate thing, I sort of scratch my head with it, because I don't want to call into question that somebody's lying, or as the lovely Ms. Watson will say herself when she's talking about other women, I don't want to say they're lying, but, and I don't want to say she's lying, but, don't these places have cameras and stuff and things?
Well,
and it really comes down to it, I mean, if this person did ask her for coffee, I don't know. If
it had just ended at that story, right? I don't think that elevator gate would even be remembered as anything significant. Yeah. But it's that it was part of a larger agenda she has.
Yeah.
And
this is what everybody says.
Yeah. A lot of people like her. They're ideological. I like that better than ideological, because it sounds more like idiot.
Yep.
And
then, but then I do have to. I kind of do see the other coin, the other side of it in a way where then, but we all do stupid things, because then Dawkins waved in and went, "Oh, poor old you! Think of the plight of these poor Muslim women who are having their clitorises cut off." And then in a way, I think, God, he then sort of basically walked into a loaded gun.
Yeah, this is, and I also don't think it just so happens that this happened. Just, it really started turning into an issue a few months after Hitchens died. And I think back in those times, when him and Dawkins were running together, both of them, this is the type of issue that Hitchens would say to him, "Let me handle this there, Dawkins. I'll take care of it, because I know how to talk to people better about this sort of social issue." I don't know if they formally agreed to that, but it just seemed that when it came to really high-end scientific issues, Dawkins always took the lead. And a guy like
And Hitchens was more the people, dealing with the people person sort of thing. Yeah, look, I know, I understand it. And it sort of just blew up into this thing. And then, as I say, we got the politically correct who give Islam a pass for all sorts of stuff. And it's very, very blurred at the moment. It's very blurred. I think I do look at it and think, I don't know whether maybe someone took critical thinking out and shot it through the head.
Took it back.
I do think
Hitchens ain't here to defend you no more, boy. We gonna shoot you back.
It's sort of like the ardents will come out. How dare you oppress women and this, that, and the other? But we'll give a free pass to the ones that are forced to wear burqas. And sort of like
I don't think it's really. To me, it's not complicated because this is the way I view it. Like sometimes things look complicated for a time, but if you take a step back and get over yourself. Right? That's what people need to remember to do. Second step is, are you making exceptions to the standards you set for the people who are your opponents?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
you are. That's the problem. And it's annoying, because I've got my blue hair now, and if that elevator gator thing hadn't happened and I'd been at that thing, I could have talked to Rebecca Watson about her blue hair. We could have
And then you'd be in jail.
Well, we could have connected on some level, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I just thought, oh no, I'm just going to leave this alone. And of course, my friend Maynard is quite friendly with them all, and he always gives me a little bit of stick here and there about what are you saying about her now? But
Maynard,
I don't know.
Maynard's a good example of people who are. There's different types of us, right? You know, you. When I listen to your show, you talk about serious stuff, but you also are good at making me laugh. I don't know if I'm so good at making people laugh. Most of the time when I try, I think I get a big fail mark on that. But I'm good at tackling straight into issues that a lot of will tippy-toe around. And I think I help other people feel okay about talking about them too. And Maynard's the type of guy who he can get along with just about anyone unless they're being completely unreasonable and help everyone feel included in the conversation. That's what he is.
Yeah, he is that, and I am indebted to him because during my times of grief, he's always rung me up and always keeps in touch. And he was an idol of mine prior to that. So, you know, Maynard was one of the people who turned me into the man I am today, a bloody total wreck. But yeah, it would look at it. Yeah, look, it'd be. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, who knows? Who knows? Maybe in the end, everyone will all be friends. It's not like I've really ever... apart from the nasty emails backwards and forward to Greta Christina, I've never really fallen out with anybody.
War. It's fantastic.
Are you tired of replaying your favourite podcast episodes 400 times over to crowbar something into that thick cranium of yours? Then the Dumbed Down Atheist podcast is for you, son. Or daughter, as the case may be. Join Nev and myself as we take intelligent, scientific and atheistic thought and reduce it to the lowest common denominator. Common denominators? They're the things the popes of the Africans can't use, aren't they, Darby? The Dumbed Down Atheist podcast. Slightly more intelligent than something you just scraped off your shoe.
Well, you know what the mistake was they made, right? Is that a lot of these people, at least in the United States, they have a collective kind of controlling force in the atheist community, right? No one wants to question, for instance, feminism. If somebody says that, what's one of their philosophies? Rape culture has been attacked now over the last couple of years, but that when they say the patriarch, this is This is a very huge concept that I need a lot of evidence to really put stake in. And their mistake was in the atheist community, people were falling back. They're like, I don't want any trouble. But then they pushed into the skeptics community. And they pushed so hard that finally some of the key skeptics went, all right, let's analyze what you're saying. That was where it all blew up.
Oh, how dare you analyze what we're saying. And look, plus I mean, the great thing about being an Australian is we're really supposed to be known for our brash, in-your-face kind of uncouth ways. And perhaps that's the thing. There may well be a community that goes on in the United States, but that don't mean jack shit to me over here. I mean, I'm kind of reminded of the Crocodile Dundee movie where Paul Hogan was told that the woman over there was actually a man. And so he walked over and just basically thrust his hand between the transvestite's legs to see if he could feel the testicles, which was just like a very uncouth thing to do. And I sort of thought, yes, that pretty much sums up us Australians. We are kind of the ones who may well see the elephant in the room, and not only will we point out the elephants there, we're most likely to go over and smack it on the ass while we're at it. So I kind of think, well, fuck you, you know. I mean, I don't care. But look, if Greta Christina's listening, I mean, I'm sure we could be friends.
Yeah. I'm
sure we could be friends.
I have the same attitude with the people that
I'd be even happy to watch some of it. She was in porn, so I'd be happy to watch some of her movies. I mean, look, you never know. I mean, I might get along with my cheeky grin. I sometimes have ways of turning things around. You never know.
Yeah.
Or imagine how pissed off she'd be. Imagine how pissed off she'd be hearing me say that.
I try to remember that at some point I'm going to find that I have views that I've been holding dogmatically. Like, we all have them. Where I grow concerned is when people try to control things around them. That's when it becomes
control.
Scary. Yeah.
And not in a good way, not with a safe word.
Yeah, because after this elevator game, it exploded. The only reason I got concerned was, first of all, I was just talking to Brian about this last night. I was really only listening to podcasts for about a year, maybe a year and a half, in atheism and skepticism. I just basically started getting involved in thinking about these things outright. And then all of a sudden this stuff exploded, and I didn't really pay attention until suddenly everyone was jumping on REAP. they were calling him a racist and a sexist.
Oh God!
And I was like, I've been listening to this guy for a year. What the fuck are they talking about? Like, he is a nice guy, and I don't just mean nice and his beliefs are shitty. I mean, he is a nice guy, and he's got good beliefs. Like he's got his head straight. So
see, that's what I mean about launching a podcast with Reap. Launching mine and having him be very supportive. That's what I'm saying. You realize they can say whatever they like, but when it really comes down to it, he's a guy who will help people.
Yeah.
When he runs the Angry Atheist, he goes out of his way to find new people who've stepped into the whole thing, and then he says, you be on my show. Let's hear your story. How did you come to this? What do you do? What else? Do you have a blog? Do you do that? You do a podcast. Then I want to interview. I want you to be outed in that world. And so, that's what I mean. I look at him and I think, well, it seems to me that he's got a mind and he speaks his mind. And, he's good. He's not afraid to fall foul of people.
Yeah.
And I admire that. I do admire that about him. And when it really comes down to it, we're just podcasters. It really doesn't matter a hill of beans whether we cause some sort of controversy in our own little world. It actually means jack shit to most people that are around us. So when the lovely Miss Christina and I were bitching, to me, I at first put a whole lot more scope on it till I realised that most people wouldn't have a clue who she was in the real world. And it's the same thing with the Watsons and a lot of people. They bag out Dawkins. Well, Dawkins is way more known than any of them. Most people know who Professor Richard Dawkins is. In the real world, basically nobody knows who Rebecca Watson is.
Yeah, it's true.
In the real world, even an incredibly popular podcast like the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, if I walk down to my local supermarket amongst the average, I can guarantee most people in there not only don't know what the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is, most of them actually don't even know what a podcast is.
Yeah, that's true. I still get that. Yeah, I still have to explain that to people. Yeah.
I get it all the time. People say, "Oh, you do that pod? What?
And
what is it you do?"
And these are people who they can be educated and everything. They've just never gotten around to checking it out.
That's right, and they're all net connected. Everyone has the internet, right?
Yeah.
They all have it, and yet so many of them say, so what is a podcast? And I say, well, it's basically like a radio show. You record it, you convert it into a file, and you put it onto the internet, and people can download it and put it into their own computers or their little iPhones or whatever, and they can listen to it later. So it's a radio show that's delayed, basically. And then so how do you do that? And I've got friends who will say to me, all right, I'm going to check out your podcast. The next time I see them, oh, no, I didn't do it. No. So how do I get there again? What is it I do? Now, I can guarantee out of all of my vanilla friends in terms of having done podcasting, if I run past the Novellas, the Watsons, the Hrabs, me, you, the Reaps, all of us, most people haven't heard of us.
No.
They haven't heard of us. So it only gets nasty, as I say, when the high profiles are starting to be seen, like some people like are seeing the Dawkinses and stuff from outside the world, and they're starting to turn off them. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think we run the danger of our more high flyers aren't always seen in very favourable light by Mr. and Mrs. Joe Public. And I'm seeing it from the very people that I think should be advocates for us, like Lawrence Mooney, who's a very fine comedian, and the same thing with Billy Bragg. Someone like Billy Bragg could do an enormous amount to help the atheist skeptical community, and he's not. He doesn't like Richard Dawkins, and that's where I'm starting to think.
Well, see, that's the thing. Richard Dawkins, you only get bits and clips of him at his level of exposure, and even like South Park really decided to take a crap on him. I guess they just kind of do that to everybody. But
yeah, they do.
If you get to know him in a larger sense, you start getting a context for how he means what he's saying. And
I love him. Yeah. I think he's great. I think he's fantastic. But it wasn't for Richard Dawkins,
But I do take your point. The other people out there who just see him speaking that night on the news or a clip from him at a conference, they don't have the time to get to know everyone they see on television. And like I say, I think that is... they had the 4 horsemen of the non-apocalypse, right?
Yep.
The new atheists. And out of all 4 of them, Hitchens was the guy who could turn an entire crowd onto his side.
Yep.
I've watched him do it in clips. It's amazing. Everyone starts out unsure of him, and by the end, they're all on his side, almost all of them.
Yep. And the thing is with the whole Dawkins thing and the general populace, and it's the same thing if you're known as being a bit of an atheist. a lot of people, they don't believe anyway. They're not believers themselves. And they kind of go, yeah, so why are you raving on about it? I don't believe it. I don't need to be part of anything. I never go to church. I don't believe it. I don't need to listen to all that stuff to know that I don't believe it. And then the other people will go, yeah, okay, you're doing this stuff. Aren't you being a bit of a troublemaker? I mean, shouldn't you just, like, you should just leave religious people alone. They should be allowed to do whatever they want because it's really not affecting you. And haven't you got something better to do? Why are you bothering with that? You don't need to tell me there's no God. I know there's no God. Why do you spend so much time wasting your breath on all of this? None of us could really care. And so that is a thing that I've really seen. So that's why I think sometimes we all need to just get a hold of ourselves and realize that we're not quite seen as being the liberators that perhaps we think we are. We're actually starting to be seen as being just as dogmatic and as bad as the religious people that we seem to be spending our time fighting against.
A couple years ago, I was the only thing I was doing online for content was I was writing the occasional blog entry. I wrote under the name The Good Apostate. And and one of the articles I wrote was after the kind of the fighting that broke out because of that stupid video that came out. You remember people were burning cars in the street in the
the innocence of Muslim. Was it innocence of Muslim?
Something like that.
It should have been called Crimes Against Cinematic Endeavor. It was the most horrible. They should have shot the director for other reasons. Yeah, go on.
So so I remember I wrote an article at the time. I had a couple of pictures of people from the Muslim world burning cars in their own neighborhood. This is your own neighborhood. Anyways, the article was called, I think something like Misjudging Your Own People. And it's a nudge on the shoulder to every kind of person who is religious or ideological. Like, you are standing shoulder to shoulder with people you're so certain you know them, but you don't. You need to question what's going to happen if certain things happen. Are they going to act in a way that I feel is good and decent, or are they going to suddenly stampede over me?
Oh, look, it's appalling, and I do fear the rise of radical Islam. I do. I admit it. And I know sometimes I spout off stuff, and I know the more politically correct look at me and say, what are you going on about? You're being a racist. You're being this, that, and the other. I understand that, but I do see things there that I don't like. I mean, that movie came out here in Sydney, which is the biggest city in Australia. Melbourne's the second. The police there was demonstrations with people calling for beheading and police cars being overturned and police horses being kicked. And they were taking it out on everybody, and none of those people made the damn movie in the first place. And so you've got this outrage that goes on. Yeah. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Anyway.
It's the same human phenomenon. It's just kind of perverted on a larger scale than it was in nature back in the day. Now with society being so large and connected with things like writing and now the internet, this is like the new age of connectivity. So in the Muslim world, you saw that type of behavior, but some sort of uncouth, unintelligible behavior to things they see as a threat can happen from any religion, from any political movement, any ideology that connects everyone and says, these are the key things we believe in, and you cannot veer from them.
Yeah, and that's the danger. See, that's the Westboro Baptist thing when they follow things to the letter. And that's what I'm saying. Not everything in the Bible is bad. There's some very good lessons in there, but there's some really bad stuff in there. And the same goes with the Quran. And people say, oh, well, whatever. But listen, read the bad passages, and I tell you, this is how you get Hamas. This is how you get the Taliban. This is how you get Westboro Baptists. Now, admittedly, the Westboro Baptists are just a pathetic bunch of little flies that should be swatted. You can't say the same for Hamas and those, because they are much, much bigger. So whenever anyone criticizes Islam, people say, oh, yeah, but the Bible's got stuff in there. It's like, I know it has. And I know that there were Christians years ago in Crusades. At the moment, though, the Christians aren't committing those atrocities.
Christians understand the state is not something they're supposed to control.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Some of them
for
do.
the most part.
And given a chance, I'm not saying some of them wouldn't rise up and be as bad, but I hate the thing is whenever anyone criticizes Islam, there's always some apologist who should be over on sort of our side who says, yeah, but what about the Bible? It's like, yeah, I know. Okay, but we're not talking about that at the moment. What we're talking about is fundamental Islam. And if I talk about some horrible serial killer, and then you go, oh, yeah, there was him, but there was this other serial killer who still did blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I understand that, but you're talking about something different. It doesn't exonerate what's going on just by that convenient, oh, yes, but look at the Bible. And this is what everybody waters down the argument with that. And it annoys me because it's like, two wrongs don't make a right, but could we just center in on this particular thing and stop? Let's not use because every time you do, as I say, the lefties do the same thing. I cannot understand for the life of me why they keep giving it a free pass, because if there was a fundamentalist Islamic State, every one of those lefties now that's doing the touchy-feely kumbaya, blah, 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 would be put up against a wall and killed.
Well, probably not even that. They'd just be thrown onto a block.
Yeah, well, I get into this argument with the international socialists who put up their little tables in Melbourne, and I can't work them out. I cannot work them out.
And the thing that we'll often hear is, well, not all Muslims want to kill people. Well, I know that. I understand that. But what I am concerned about is that they have a lot of programming in them. So I'm not concerned about the 50 people like an hour from here in a community of mostly Christians. I am concerned about when we have like a large increasing portion of our population that is absorbing their ideas, and then suddenly the stimuli hits. Yes. I'm worried about down the road. That's what I'm.
That's right. And they are seeing that in European countries, and everyone's too scared to say anything because you'll be branded a racist.
Right.
We're ready to show off, sir. When old Mother Hubbard heard the cops were coming, he sailed out on the seas. Signed up his chosen few, they were quite a motley crew for 1 billion years faithfully. He said a table and clay can really make your day, and I can even raise your IQ. Turn you straight and queer and make it all clear like the stars in Hollywood do. So come and sing the crewmate song. 1 billion years won't seem so long to get your way repostulated. As for the rest, we'll litigate. Scrub this leaking tub with your bare hands as you wear with pride your great armband. Old Mother Hubbard had a well-stocked cupboard, though his crew ate beans and rice, and they never got paid for working 80-hour days and sleeping with the roaches at night.
And that's what happened when Geert Wilders came to visit. I hadn't even heard of Geert Wilders. I didn't know who he was from a bar of soap. I just happened to be reading the Facebook Melbourne Atheist who said he was coming. Does anybody know anything about him? And then I just opened up a can of worms on the show where I said, I know nothing about him. I pressed the record button. Now let's go look around the internet and see what we can find out about him. And of course, he is branded as being a neo-Nazi and all of this stuff. And I look at it, but they are seeing fundamental Islam rise in a lot of European countries, and the touchy-feely political left don't, for some reason, I don't know, they're not really looking at it. And like, I feel bad too. Like, I have friends that are Muslim too, and the friends that are very nice people and everything. And I don't fear that, but it's like anything. If there was a growing wave in Christianity that now was behaving like our fundamental Muslim friends, I would be just as concerned. I'd be very concerned, in fact. It wouldn't necessarily make me hate the family that live across the road that go to church.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But if there was this radical element, which is it's not a tiny element. See, Westboro Baptists are one small little inbred family of idiots. Yeah. But imagine if the Westboro Baptist ideology spread and became 2% of the population of the United States. Then
and it's
it wouldn't. Yes,
look, it was important towards my parents and to me that certain there was positive incentive given, because like I think I've told you, we've had my background is Mennonite, so like my great grandparents and a little bit of my grandparents were using horse and buggy and stuff.
Yeah, so you're a bunch of wackos, basically.
But society had positive incentives, like get a job over here and be modern in these ways, and you can make money. that you can't make if you're living on a little farm and you're running around with a horse. Yeah, that's positive. But there's also negative. Like, if you don't bathe regularly, people won't want to be around you and you could lose your job. And Mennonites from the old colony have a real problem, some of them, with bathing regularly, right?
Stinky.
And I'm going to use that as an analogy, not to say that Muslims don't bathe. I am not saying that, just to be clear.
Yeah,
but
you got to be very careful what you say.
Yeah,
that's right.
but as an analogy of positive and negative, they come to countries in the West or in Australia, Western cultures, right? And they have the positive incentive to get a job. But they don't have the negative incentive because liberals are knocking everyone out of the way, saying, you can't tell them how to dress, you can't tell them what to do in any way whatsoever. Like, if an employer, like they're disrupting my factory line, no one else is doing this. I have Hindus working here, I have people from Africa. These people are disrupting the line. And we need to change that. They'll say, no, you're being discriminatory, you're being intolerant.
Yeah.
Like, everyone else has to get along with these rules. Fuck specialization, like who gets special treatment.
Yes.
Everyone has to get along.
Yes, and that's pretty much my argument to it too. But it's a can of worms, and you have to be very, very, very careful, because the trouble is the argument gets completely clouded then in this heated emotion. And this is what I'm saying, like, about our ardent atheist friends. Like, I can sit with a person who I vehemently disagree with, and believe it or not, I will let them talk. I won't completely shout them down. I will let them talk for the reason that perhaps they need to hear the waffle that's coming out of their mouth. Hopefully it might connect with their ears, and they might actually think, hang on, maybe I'm being a dick.
That's true. That's good.
And I also want to listen to what they've got to say so that I can sum them up, not so much as my adversary, but I need to listen to what they're saying. Sometimes I need to let it well round for a little while in my brain in order to work out what makes them tick, in order to be able to engage with them, and in order to perhaps at some point maybe make them see that some of their things might be a bit off. And so, this is what I don't like. See, this is fundamentalism. That it's the same thing, as I say, with the fundamental Muslims that go to a different country and then say, right, well, we're not going to assimilate. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And I think that's grossly dangerous. I really do. I think it is very dangerous. I think I look at other people of other cultures. I say, bring the culture, bring it, bring your food, bring some of your ways. That's cool. And what's good there, hey, I'd embrace it myself. I'd be more than happy. You do need a cultural identity. There's nothing wrong with that. We live in a big world where we come from different things and we can all learn from each other. That's fantastic. But when you come in with an ardent thing that you're going to change where you're going, and you're going to start imposing things like Sharia law, we should be very, very wary of that. Very wary. Sharia law is one step away from barbarianism.
We should also be upfront with them and say, look, you might not be familiar with this, depending on what you've learned from the home country you're coming from, but over here we had lots of fighting between Protestants and Catholics, and in our culture we decided that there'd be certain spaces where we all have common rules. Right? No one gets special treatment, the Catholics or the Protestants. And every culture that comes here now, those areas are considered secular. Like how you are at work, if they allow jewelry, then go ahead and wear your religious jewelry. But if you're on the line and they say no jewelry, it doesn't matter what your religion, it's a safety issue, you can't wear it.
That's right. So take it off. That's exactly right. And I agree with that. I totally agree with it.
If your job is time sensitive and your religion says you need to go and do something in the middle of your work and no one else is doing it, then, that's productive value. That's up to the employer whether they're going to allow that or not. Not up to the government to come and make them do all this stuff.
That's right.
I think that's pretty common sense.
That's right. And it is. It's like I love my long hair and I'm very vain, but if I was working in a kitchen, I might have to wear a hairnet because who wants my hair in their food? So, I mean, if I argue it from the perspective, that's my religious belief, well, too bad. No one wants to eat your hair, dude, unless, of course, they have some sort of strange fetish for that.
You could find a specialized restaurant. There you go.
Yes, if they have some strange fetish for it. And as I say, Alicia, if you're listening, please do call. And that was like 3 hours ago. I don't think your podcast has ever gone so long, has it really?
No, this will be our longest episode, yeah.
This will be a whopper of a download. This will be in the realms of mine.
Well, what I'll probably do for this one, because it is going to be like 3 hours, is I'll probably break the file into two and call it part A and part B, and then just put them up at the same time.
and then every bugger downloads part B instead of part A. That's what happens to me when I put 2 parts up. They never download. And I always put the second part. Go back, get the one before this so it makes sense. And still, I always watch a disproportionate amount of numbers. And then I think, how stupid are my listeners? But I don't want to say that because I don't want to offend them.
Well, Brian was laughing at me for the amount of editing I do for my show.
Oh, I never edit.
I have put in 10 hours into an episode before.
Oh, no. I don't do that. I will record sometimes if I'm not multi-tracking, like if Nev's on the show, well, that's a whole different ball game. But sometimes I'll feed it straight into one machine, and unless there's anything in there that's libelous or slanderous or whatever, no, it'll go straight into that machine. It will go into the computer. It will be compressed, expanded to 100% and limited. It'll be converted into an MP3 file, and if it's a quick thing, it'll be up on the web probably within an hour or two of actually being done. I do not go back and edit stuff out. I know people do. I know some people are so anal with their podcasts, they will go in between words and silence breaths.
It's been a bumpy ride. We all deserve our special place in the sun. Those were the last tears I cried over you.
And I just think you have got to be fucking pulled.
Hey, and Brian was telling me that there's a feature on Audacity he uses. I'm going to be checking it out. That actually goes through, and that's the first thing he says he does is automatically crunches out all the pauses. And just puts the words together.
And just compresses it all. Look, I can't do it. I am hopelessly guilty, and I'm going to have to get going in a minute. I'm absolutely hopelessly guilty of admitting that I was in radio, and in Australia, the Private Parts movie came out. I had not heard of Howard Stern prior to that, and I saw his movie, and we can't get him in Australia, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So I haven't listened to him for the last 10 or more years now. But the one thing that came from him is that if you're going to be in that business, you need to tell your listeners who you really are. There's no point being what you're not. They'll either love you or hate you. And if your personality sucks so badly, then you've got to go and do something else. And that's why I don't do a shitload of editing for the show. And that's why a lot of there's stuff in there that I leave in. Sometimes it may be a little more personal, but the journey that I do with my listeners, it's like, this is me. If you don't like it, don't download it. If you do like it, come along. And that is very much the Stern kind of thing. People either love him or hate him. But the thing I really like about his show, I like it way more than anal ring toss and when he gets the girls in, is the first hour or so of the show where he will sit and talk to Robin about what's going on in his life. And it can be the most mundane, what he's watched on TV, or his latest little man bag that he's bought, or his phobia about something, or imitating his mum, who, as he said, he spent years in therapy trying to get her voice out of his head. But the point of him is, if you've listened to him for a long time, you do feel like you know him.
Yeah,
and
that's great when you connect to somebody like that.
And I am shamelessly prepared to admit that I am a huge fan of his, even though of course we don't listen to him in Australia because we're not allowed to. But he would be. There's no two ways about it. He is the greatest. You could call him a DJ, but he's not really a DJ because he doesn't play music. But he is probably the greatest radio personality that has ever lived in terms of... Well,
yeah, he's been a phenomenon. He's a phenomenon.
He is an absolute phenomenon. And I live in a country where most people have never even heard of him.
Wow.
Except the odd person who tries to be an imitator. We get them here. You know they've listened to him and you know what they're trying to do. And they fail. They miss the point. Yeah. They miss the point. Same as his detractors miss the point. They just see him as, oh, yes, all he's interested in is in strippers and God knows what. But he's not. He's way more deeper than that. And he can be an asshole too. Don't worry. He could be. I interviewed a guy called Joseph Schambra, who was on the Stern Show a few days prior to him being on my podcast. I felt so sorry for the guy because Robin and Howard just absolutely annihilated this poor guy. And he's a full-on Catholic, and he used to be a porn star, and he's gay, and he's trying to live the non-gay lifestyle by abstinence and lots of prayer.
Yeah, good luck there.
And yeah, you know, they sank the boots into him, told him he was basically fucked in the head. And then they started dicking with him with all the sound effects and stuff. And I actually really wanted to listen. This is about the thing. I really wanted to hear what he had to say. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but they didn't give him a chance to talk. And I was like, one time I ever heard the show, I was like, I was saying, for fuck's sake, Howard, shut the fuck up and let him talk, will you? Just let him talk. I just want to hear what he's got. It's probably because I run an atheist podcast. I wanted to hear what he said. So I sent him an email. I found him on Facebook, sent him an email, and I got him to be on the podcast about 3 or 4 days later.
Oh, yeah, I think I heard that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, where I actually let him talk. Now, it was funny. My listeners I got words from some of my listeners saying, oh, we hope you're not being brainwashed by this guy. We don't know if, you know, because your podcast is sort of in a way, why are you having this guy on? But it's the same reason I have a lot of the religious people on. And on those shows, I don't usually behave like a buffoon, as you would note.
Yeah.
So sometimes when serious interview guests are on, I'm not there to score points and and make dick jokes.
Yeah.
They're vastly different from the other shows.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the point is there's many facets to the thing. And I don't know how we got onto this, but that's what I'm saying about, the over-editing of podcasts.
Yeah. Well, I make it very clear to any of my guests that ask about it, I never edit for content. The only thing I'll edit is to make sure I take out background noise, take out ums and ahs, or if someone says something
that's libelous
twice, libelous or twice in a row, and it's kind of going over the same thing, maybe I'll take it out. It's possible.
Yeah, but I tend to go with the non-editing policy for mine. I know there are ums, I know there are tuts, I know there are lots of things, but I think, no, for a start, I don't have the inclination
It's just
to
choice. There's no right or wrong about it. I enjoy your show the way it is. Yeah.
No, and I try to, anyone who's on there I'm going to try and drag out as much of them as I possibly can. And I know they're going to be guarded about stuff, and I know they're not going to want to talk about some things, but I will try and drag out as much of them as I possibly can. And that's where I admire Stern, because as he says, I don't know why people are so frightened about me. If I ask you something and you don't want to answer it, just say I don't want to answer it. You know, so he ends up with interviews with people that are just, he will interview some celebrities and you'll get an interview from him that you won't get anywhere else.
Right, yeah.
Will not get anywhere else. He will take someone down a path and then he'll suddenly say, so how long has it been since you got laid or whatever? There'll be fatuous little questions in there. But he will get a person and he will take them down a path. When he's interviewed people like Billy Joel and stuff like that, I've enjoyed his interviews greatly. When he first had Lady Gaga on the show, as far as I was concerned, I had no time for Lady Gaga whatsoever till she was a guest on the show. And then when I actually heard her being interviewed properly, I went, oh, okay, so there is something behind this phenomenon. And they sat her there on a grand piano and she actually played for real. And I went, okay, no, this is a person who's talented. If it hadn't been for him, I would still think, oh, yeah, Lady Gaga, she's off in the realms of your Kanye Wests, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the thing I would say to anyone running a podcast, even though most people wouldn't listen to me because what the fuck would I know, is definitely don't try and be, because I hear it in podcasts and I hear a lot on radio. People always try to project the personality they think the audience want them to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? When I started this podcast, I had a few influences that really made me think about what I wanted to do. It was actually it had nothing to do with the big ones. It had to do, you were one,
poor bugger.
Reeps shows.
Yep.
And, the guys on A News, people like this who, they'll say what they think. I mean, it's not like, they don't think about, whatever comes out of their mouth. But you guys, you have your own style. You're okay with your own style. Once you get to the big leagues, there's this like fear that they don't want to say certain things or they don't want to bring up certain subjects. I don't like it.
Yeah. No, neither do I. I mean, I will avoid some things if I think it is bad taste or I think it's going to, maybe cause grief or it's unnecessary. But the rest of the time, as far as I'm concerned, gloves are off and you should just do it.
Yeah.
You need to present to the listeners as much of you as you possibly can. Obviously, you may not tell them absolutely everything about yourself, but they have to know who it is on the other side of that thing. And I think people appreciate that. And I think that will be the thing in the long run that will eventually, podcasts will win out. They are gaining more and more ground.
I think it's going to bring down the level of celebrity that can come from stuff like
Yeah.
audio, but I think
Yep.
people will have more satisfaction in the amount of choice they have about what they really want to hear.
Yeah, I think they will too. And it's one of those things to all the people who listen. You've got to get out there and tell other people that you do listen to these things.
Yeah.
It's as much of an education. It's the bums on seat. It's the feet on the ground. It's people got to go and do it. Now I've got to go and do it now. I have to leave you because now you've managed to make me. I mean, I'm usually in and out of these things in about 10 minutes. You know me. I don't like to talk. I'm a quiet sort of shy guy, but I see even
Yes,
by my
you
own
are.
recording here,
You're very coy.
It's up to, yeah, I am. It's up to 3 hours and 13 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's too long for anybody to listen to me.
Don't worry,
but that's
I'll throw in some clips. I'll get some of your previous media, put it in there. I have ways of getting people, and I'll break it into 2 chunks. So some people will probably listen to the 2 chunks at separate times, but it'll flow
And
good.
some people will feel so nauseous they'll be bringing up chunks listening to it. I'm going to go, Mr. Beard.
Alrighty,
Good luck.
So I'll let you go, and thanks for being on the show.
Yes, thank you very much, and may you enjoy your maple syrup. If any time you'd like to send some genuine maple syrup over in the post, I shall give you my address. I would invite you to my glam party, but you are an awful long way away from where I am. But should you decide by March the 8th you want to jump on a plane, we have a pole dancer, so that's always good, isn't it? So
That is always a good sign.
Don't forget to look me up. You'll keep touch on Facebook because you always do.
Yep.
Goodbye, my Canadian friend.
Just rain, endless rain, waiting for the summertime again. Just pain, endless pain, waiting for the summertime. Well, since you left, I've done my best. Well, I've ranted and raved to get you off my chest. There's pain outside my window again. I'm waiting for the summertime. I'm waiting for the summertime. Just rain, endless rain, washing out my hopes until they fade. In vain, oh, I tried in vain. Although you want me back this way again. Well, since you left, there've been clouds in the sky, and those rays of light are refusing to shine. It's cold, it's gray outside my window again. I'm waiting for the summertime. I'm waiting for the summertime. Summertime. I'm waiting for the summertime. Waiting for the summertime. Waiting for the summertime. I'm waiting for the summertime. Just rain, endless rain, drowning out the flames and embers me all day. Oh, I cried in shame. My life, it's never gonna be the same. Well, since you left, I've done my best. Well, I've ranted and raved to get you off my chest. There's pain outside my window again. Waiting for the summertime. Waiting for the summertime. Waiting for the summertime, waiting for the summertime, waiting for the summertime, waiting for the summertime, waiting for the summertime.
Hey there, how's it going?
Oh, good. I just finished, and I thought I'd try you the second I finished, because I'm that kind of guy. I'm a stand-up guy.
There you go. On the ball.
Yeah, I guess.
I just finished myself a 3-hour interview with Rob Darby.
Jesus.
Yeah.
3 hours. And Rob Darby, that name sounds familiar, but I don't know why.
He runs the Dumbed Down Atheist podcast.
I've never even heard of that.
Oh, no?
No. Well, I don't pay that much attention, honestly. Beyond like the big 4 or 5 of them that I already listen to, I just don't really bother.
But his stuff's always more. He's got a great sense of humor. That's why I like his show.
Oh, okay.
He almost never even bothers to edit it. He just. But so 3 hours was not unexpected. He's got a lot to say.
No, that's great. I mean, honestly, the only reason I picked an hour for what I'm doing is I can wrap my mind around it.
Yeah,
it's like an hour. There's no real confusion around that. So, it's real easy, real straightforward.
Yeah. So I've watched the ones you've done so far. You're doing interviews on YouTube now.
Well, I don't even call it interview. It's funny because I got some hate mail today, and they were like, "Oh, you're terrible," and I was like, "Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Like, nobody forced you to watch it, and you didn't pay for it." So, I mean, I try to focus on. Obviously, there are times where I ask questions, of course, but I try to keep it as conversational as possible. And
yeah,
I mean, that's sort of my goal, and I guess because not just because I want to keep myself away from criticism about being a bad interviewer, but I guess I'm not interested in having a list of questions. But I really like.
Oop. You there?
Some things. Yeah.
Are
you listening to me?
Yeah, the signal's going in and out a little bit.
Yeah, that might happen. It's unfortunate, but very true and possible. So, yeah, I just try to keep it casual because I'm lazy and I don't feel like doing anything. Like the amount of editing you do, I'm just not willing to do that much work. It's just too damn much work.
I was just telling
it takes hours.
Yeah, I was just telling Rob Darby that Brian was making fun of me for it.
Yeah, like that Robert Price song you did. I would never find the time to do that. I like just the posted blog entry. That was, even though everyone I'm talking to has already seen it, I'm sure. I wanted to. I had to deactivate the Ken Burns effect on fucking iMovie because it just automatically does it. So I had to Google it, and I didn't see the thing they were talking about at first. It was like, fuck, this is such bullshit. And, it's for like maybe a 10-minute thing of me talking to a camera. It's not a huge production, but and that's why I really try to stay away from any need for editing because it's just obnoxious.
Yeah, I was telling him that my record is I spent 10 hours editing a show.
Oh my God.
Well, but see, everyone it's their own way, right? It's a lot of work, but I love doing it. Like, it's just something that I want to do.
Well, no, I love editing, actually. It's such a time suck that it's like,
yeah,
of all of the time in the day to do stuff, that's time that I'm not spending with the wife. I'm not spending playing, Uncharted. I'm not writing. There's other things that I'm not doing when I'm doing that. And because like the last couple vlog entries I did, it was great because I did not cut it at all. So all I did was I put the bumper in the beginning, the end, exported, and uploaded, and that was it. So it takes a little time to trim the clip at the beginning and the end so that it's not looking at me figuring out which button to press. But besides that, that's all the editing I've done for most of them, and it's great because that means I'm done.
Yeah.
And I watch it once in iMovie to make sure there's no glitches or anything, and after I render it, I watch it again to make sure that it saved the file correctly. But beyond that, I just move on to the next one. So
yeah, well, I like them. They're enjoyable. You have an inquisitive nature that comes across not as aggressive, but as like I have this question, and they're like, oh, well, that's a good question. Let's talk about that. So it works. It works, man.
Well, the thing is that irritates me because it's like, well, why should we? I don't see any reason for that. Like the whole holiday holy day thing, I had taken for granted that the meaning had always been a certain way. And when I looked it up, it's like, oh, no, it hasn't always been. Oh, no, it was the Xmas thing. I had always assumed that was a valid criticism, that Xmas is a recent thing in the culture and that we use it in order to cut Christ out. I assumed it was not for any anti-religious reason, but just, convenience.
Yeah.
But I thought Fox called it. I thought they were right, that is a recent thing. But when I looked it up, it is not recent at all. In fact, it's almost as old as the original spelling of the word with Christ in it. And it was like, well, wait a minute. If that's true, then their criticism is bullshit because it's been around almost as long. So they can't say this is they can't say it's done out of disrespect because it was probably done just because obviously at some point writing things out took a lot longer than it does now. So it was probably just a convenience thing. So but it just irritated me. It was like, fuck, I always assumed this was a certain way, and I was wrong. Yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, that's true. But that's, sometimes it's a real mind blower when you learn something, but it's always worth knowing.
Yeah, I guess it's just, I think at some point I get tired of not knowing things. I'm like, oh, I don't know that either. Okay. Like I'm having this long thing on Twitter with this guy who's going into biology and I just don't know enough about it. So I'm just like, all right, I mean, maybe you're right about speciation. I have no idea. I don't know how that works. And I frankly don't give a damn because even if what you say is true, that doesn't necessarily lead to your claim. It just doesn't. I mean, and you can't prove that it does. Otherwise you would have by now. But I'm not going to spend all day researching that because I don't care. So, I figure it's his claim to prove, not mine.
Yep. Yeah, if he wants to spend his time proving it, then that's his business.
Care. So I said, oh, okay, what's the source of that? And he said, it's a fact, look it up. And it was like, yeah, but I didn't claim it.
Yeah.
Why the fuck should I look it up if you're the one who claimed it? I have no incentive to do that. And I don't even care if it's true. Let's say that he did that. Let's say it's recorded like on vinyl and wax and like and early motion picture film. Like let's say that all of that exists. What the hell does that have to do with anything? Like, does that suddenly make the theory invalid? If someone found papers written by Einstein where he admitted that he thought the relativity was bullshit, does that mean it's bullshit? No, we've measured it. It's fucking true. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Time is relative, and it has been measured as such. And DNA proves evolution, so it's like it has no bearing. I think Kirk Cameron did that too. It irritated me so much. Or no, he pulled the, Darwin was a racist, and it's like. Let's say he was. Let's say that he actually wrote the words, I hate all black people. Let's say that is absolutely true. What does that have to do with it? Like, it doesn't it has no bearing on it. And I'm not happy about that. I would rather he not be. But, okay, fine, he was. Let's say he was a terrible, terrible racist that doesn't have anything to do with the theory. And I hate that argument. It's such a shitty argument. That's what annoys me about it. It's not even a good argument. It's like, okay, well, and Hitler was a vegetarian, so does that mean that vegetarianism is bad because Hitler was a vegetarian?
Yep.
How about mustaches? He had a mustache too.
I totally agree with you, and it does get frustrating. Are we arguing an issue here, or are we going? Isn't that really when that turns onto a you as a person? If something applies to you as opposed to the argument, isn't that just going ad hominem? Like they're switching the argument over to...
Of course.
Yeah.
I asked this guy, what's the relevance? And he said, oh, well, the relevance... It's like, no, you're the one who brought it up. Like, you obviously brought it up for a fucking reason. So, what was the reason? I haven't had a response yet from him about that. But it's like, I mean, seriously, fine. Like, let's just say that you're right. So what? Like, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
But I suspect that, of course, it's, it's just an ad hominem. And fine, like, but... So annoying. Yep. So are you on now, or are you just hanging out?
No, I just finished my interview just before I contacted you. I figured I'd record a little bit with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what are you recording on?
My wonderful Mac.
God, I have tried that like 3 times, and it froze every time. If it weren't for the general quality of Macintoshes, I would go back to PC. I'm just like, this is bullshit.
Well, I had my hard drive go. I don't know if you saw that on Facebook.
Oh, I think I did, actually.
Yeah, about a month ago.
Oh, man. Yeah, mine's like halfway full after only 2 years. I guess it's all the porn. I didn't think it took up that much space, but...
Yeah, it's amazing how it all accumulates after a while.
Damn, oh, no shit. That in video games, I'm like, wait, oh, wow, that's a lot of gigs.
Yeah. Well, with mine, I have 2. I have my regular Windows operating laptop from HP. I use that for a lot of the other stuff, and this is mostly just for my podcasting stuff. So it was a real devastation there when it went, that hard drive.
Oh yeah, I bet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the near future because I have recorded all of my video work, like YouTube video work, on an external, and it's only a terabyte. Which obviously when we were kids that was a ton of space, but
yeah.
If each project takes up 1 gigabyte and you do like 300 of them, well, that adds up really quickly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is the first week where I may not get to a vlog entry because I haven't found time to record it this week. And I've been doing one of those a week for like 6 months now. So, that's a new project every 6 months. And as we both saw, 2 of those were 24 minutes long. So that takes up, it's just, that's
accumulates.
Space.
Yep.
Yeah. But I don't want to erase any of it, so I'm like, fuck, I don't know what to do. I might just have to get another hard drive and another after that. Oh well.
Yeah, well, hopefully they don't accumulate to the point where you have to erase anything. But, is there any way you can compress the data as a finished project?
God, yeah. Oh well, actually, the finished ones I don't keep. I just keep the projects, like the ones that are in an edit, so that if I want to, I can export again. In fact, I never keep the finished ones because I figure I can always re-render. Now, the thing I like about Google Hangout, though, is that it just records it for you. And it's in a data center somewhere in like South Carolina, so I don't have to worry about it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I don't know how YouTube and Yahoo and other systems work. Like, I think Brian said something like YouTube... It uploaded onto YouTube, it's about 72 hours of video every single minute, I think he said. Like, ridiculous amount of data. And so, every you don't watch YouTube, you are like... I'm like, how the hell... Every hour. How else they would do it,
I'm missing the last 20 seconds of what you said.
Oh, that's okay. It's nothing important. I'm let me see actually how is there a signal thing on? Oh, you know what? I'm hitting different wires.
What's that?
Oops. Yeah. That it's either hold or it won't.
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I'm back on 4G.
Well, it's jumping to different signals. That's what it's doing.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on. And for some reason, some Wi-Fi hotspots are shit, and so it doesn't, nothing happens. Have you ever had that where you're traveling and it hits a hotspot, it shows you a little icon, but then you can't load anything. Like you go on Facebook, nothing loads.
Yep.
You have to switch it off, and I don't know why that is. I have no idea. I don't know enough about how much this stuff works. So
I think it's something to do with the different companies fighting over network.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's some kind of dirty play between network controllers.
Well, you have to assume that at some point that is going to become an issue, just like with gas companies and because there is only so much physical space on the planet. So
yeah.
at some point, all of the airspace will be taken up by some, Wi-Fi broadcasting thing.
Yep.
I don't know. They don't ask me.
It'll be the next gasoline fight that everyone's worried about heading our way.
God, I never even thought about that. I just assumed that we would all be dead by the time that happens.
Well, we might be. Yeah. Look on the bright side. We might all be dead before that.
Yeah, exactly. No, my wife has often talked about AI, like artificial intelligence. She's like, oh, the singularity's coming. I'm like, no, it's not. And she's like, no, it will. It'll be like by 2013. I'm like, or 2030, I think she said. And I was like, all right, well, even if it is, then like, what the fuck are we going to do about it? I mean,
have you run into anyone who's a transhumanist who believes like the way they talk about science is they basically think that it's going to create a utopia?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what they mean by that. Just
science will
perfect.
I'll give you an example. I was listening to what's that? Brave Hero podcast from Justin.
Right. I've heard a couple of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Carla Porta did the interview. He wasn't on the show for this one, and they had this guy as a transhumanist, and he's like, I'm going to have them freeze my body, maybe just my brain, my head.
Right.
And then in the future, they'll hopefully find a way to, and he was confident, like they'll find a way to thaw me and give me a new body, and in the future we won't fight over these terrible, stupid things anymore.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is like a full-fledged replacement religion.
Yeah. I guess I haven't really thought about that much because I guess I just think of it as kind of not applicable yet. I mean,
yeah,
because even presuming that's true, I assume there's some expense involved with keeping the brain, and even if not, we're kind of assuming that nothing will happen between now and when this technology is there that damages the brain.
Yeah, it's a scam. Like they've shown that there's no way they can reverse the damage to the freezing process to your brain. Like it just can't be done.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's the answer.
Yeah, when you're dead, buddy. But they don't want to believe that. They want to think the mortals in the future will be supreme beings of science.
I mean, I think that will probably be true. As we know from Moore's law, everything is accelerating, and I'm sure that will happen. But I'm not confident that, like you said, just the freezing damage. Like even if they could reverse engineer, I don't know. I'm just not confident that would render the results that he's predicting.
Yeah.
Same thing with what is that called? I just forgot it. Well, yeah, like just artificial intelligence. Like I do not. I'm very skeptical of the idea that we will reach a point where a man-made computer will be indistinguishable from a biologically developed mind. I just don't think that's going to happen for our lifetime, at least. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, maybe we're both wrong, but. I think the thing that really, if you listen to the show, you would get uncomfortable with what the guy's talking about. But the thing that I right away thought about was that I had heard Jay Novella saying he was going to have his head frozen on a previous show. I forget what show I heard him on. It was Ask an Atheist, I think maybe he was on.
Oh, I haven't listened to that in a long time.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. And I remember he was like, oh yeah, he had the same confidence, like, they're going to freeze my head. And because otherwise you'll be dead forever. It's like, yeah, that's really seems to be what you're afraid of, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's kind of just what everyone else expects. Like, anyone who's not, betting on the incredible is going, well, I don't want to die, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said with the freezing thing. I'm just not convinced that whatever method we developed to conquer the problem will be any better than the problem itself.
Yeah.
Because if your brain is damaged in the freezing process, then it's sort of a moot point, isn't it? Because even if they bring that brain back, it won't necessarily be you, at least not in the way that you think of you. So does it even matter at that point?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, if you awaken in a new robotic body and you're like, hello, my name is George.
Yeah, or what if there's just bits of the brain that aren't functioning in a way that is unpredictable at this point, but which you kind of need. Like, God, we saw this documentary about, I think, healthcare, and part of it was kind of depressing actually, because part of it was about how these twin brothers, one of them I think had not been oxygenated enough, and so his brain suffered pretty severe damage. And even though they were genetically identical, the damaged brother, he would require assisted living for the rest of his life. Like, he would never be independent. And the other brother was fine. And I think the problem was that had the insurance company just given them what they needed, then everything would have been okay in terms of taking care of this boy. But because the insurance company refused for whatever reason, they have to rely on basically the welfare system, Medicare, all that. And so the irony of it was that the whole everyone wants to avoid living off of welfare in some way or another, but they have no choice because they can't afford to take care of him in the way that he needs by their own means.
Yeah.
And what struck me about it was that the brain is such a delicate organ that this poor boy has been rendered mentally incapacitated for his entire life because of a medical error, which probably could have been pretty preventable.
Yeah.
And that's his whole life, that's it. So twin brothers, genetically identical, one's brain is fine, the other one isn't, due to that. And so I would wonder if maybe that kind of a thing could happen in the scenario that you're talking about. Because if you come back, but you're not fully capable, and you're probably not even aware that you're not, because you're only aware of what you're aware of, you don't have any way to tell people, like, oh, by the way, I used to be better at this sort of thing, but now I'm not because of a mistake you made.
I call this is my pet name for it, I call it the transporter dilemma.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah.
If you go through a transporter and something appears on the other, like Star Trek's transporter, you appear on the other side, it's exactly the same, and that person over there thinks that they are you. Is it still you? Because everything's been taken apart.
Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, I think it's a perfectly valid philosophical question. Or two, if you are taken apart and put back together, can we really verify that you are the exact same person? Or is it just that it destroys one copy and makes another one?
Right, exactly. And then the question I think the reason it makes people uncomfortable when you start asking questions like that is because for me, asking questions like that made me realize that I am not a set being. I am a process.
Yeah.
And it's kind of more difficult to get attached to yourself in the same way.
Well, I've been really fascinated recently with the whole concept of part to whole, I think because of the part to whole fallacy, where people say, well, part of the Bible is true, therefore the whole Bible is true. And I've really thought about it a lot because I thought, okay, the image that most of us have from our childhood years of castles, like fairy tale castles, what they look like, what their components are. We all kind of had this image in our head of like round turrets with pointy spires. And I started wondering, okay, what defines a fairy tale castle when you really break it down to its components? Because as far as I can tell, it's round.
Yeah.
Like, if you add round to a tower, if you add round, and I mean, that's a drastic oversimplification. I'm also not an architect. But I was looking, my wife and I went to Disneyland a while back, a few months ago, and I was looking at the model they have. They're based on a Spanish castle. I thought, what is it about this arrangement of shapes that makes me feel a certain way? I can't identify it. But I know that if you started taking towers off, it would increasingly look less like the fairy tale castle.
Right.
So at some point, there's a critical mass point at which, if you showed a picture of the building to someone, they would recognize and go, yes, that's Sleeping Beauty's castle. And I wonder what defines that critical mass point. Where is that defined? Where's that line drawn?
Yeah.
I say that all the time. And I don't know what the answer is. It's kind of like how kids draw houses by drawing a box, a triangle on top of the box, and a door in front. So my question is it a house picture if the triangle isn't on top? I think it's the door, actually. I think the door defines it as a house.
Yeah.
Does it have
and maybe a couple windows. Maybe.
Yeah. But it's like, why is it my brain does not recognize it as a house unless there is at least a door on a box?
Yeah.
Why is that sufficient and nothing else is? Or something else isn't more sufficient? Like you just said, windows. Like, does it have to have a window or two windows? And why is that? Why is it my brain clicks house on one thing but not another? And I have no idea.
Yeah, but that goes to the question of symbolism, mythology, dreams.
Yeah.
What is it about certain things that really stand out as symbolic in our minds?
Yeah, but you're right with the whole human thing. Like, I think that's a good description of a process, because am I my body? If my arm were cut off, would I be less me? Well, no. Okay, so what about if part of my brain went away? Well, I guess that depends. Would it be the one that keeps memory? Because certainly some memories help define who I am, but what if, in fact, like I went through a pretty big experience in 2008, which at the time I was creating memories, but some of them I really do not retain. I can't remember what happened in some situations, but it did happen, but I can't remember it. So it's effectively it didn't happen, but I know that it did because I have surrounding memories that inform me that it did. So I'm like, and then I can remember things like, a piano recital when I was 5. So my question is, well, if the memory that is already fuzzy were to be removed, would I be the same person? And I believe the answer is yes, but then I don't know why. Like, at what point, critical mass, would I no longer be me if we started removing memories or opinions or thoughts or whatever? And I don't know.
And these questions, it's depending on the state of mind you're in, they can be very upsetting to people. Just even asking the questions and making.
I guess I'm just never upset by it.
Yeah, but it depends. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it depends on the person and what they're going through.
Yeah, no, I know. I think it makes perfect sense, and I think that's why people get uncomfortable is because they're like, well, wait, but I'm just me, right? And then you're like, well, why?
That's also why the power of the immortal soul is so appealing to people too. Is that it's just I am me, and I will always be me, and don't question that. I know I'm me.
Yeah, I've had that kind of a discussion with people, and I've definitely like they have a saturation point of discomfort that is much earlier than mine, but yeah, it's like, okay, so then, because sometimes I hear people talk about the soul as if it were a quantitative thing. So I'm like, okay, if this is a quantitative thing, let's quantify it. How, like, is there a piece that you can have? Is this divisible?
Yeah.
And then as soon as we go down that road, they're like, no. It's like, okay, well, you just said, you just used terms that would apply to a quantifiable thing. So if it's not quantifiable, why are you using that term?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think also it also attaches to the whole question of the abortion.
Yeah, I got into that recently, and I don't know the answer. I've heard people, and I don't know. I know why I'm pro-choice, but I don't know that I can defend it against the criticism. Like when people say to me, do you think it's wrong to kill people? And I say yes, and they say, well, at what point do you believe that,
Yeah, and it's a difficult question, right? It's not.
I don't know.
It's not just cut and dry.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think it's a difficult issue, because it's not like you press a button and suddenly a zygote is a baby. It's, some of this stuff is largely arbitrary. Which is uncomfortable.
I think that the reason, this is just my own observations and thoughts on it. I think one of the reasons that people get so bent out of shape they're willing to, scream and yell at each other, in some rare cases kill people about saving babies, is because they're not saving another person. They're saving their own sense of immortality. Like, I did not slowly appear from different forces, and I will not slowly disappear into those forces. I am me. How can I not be me? And therefore, that child is already that child because I was always me.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've never actually understood it because I have read passages where in a pretty explicit detail, God kills children.
Yeah.
And so it's like, where does this whole moral argument come from if he doesn't seem to have a problem with it after a certain age?
Yeah.
So why
why is it excusable when God decides to stamp out a whole bunch of kids, but if somebody's gonna get an abortion, it's totally different.
Yeah,
shouldn't God be setting the standard on that?
Well, and if he can do whatever he wants, and there's a different standard, then at what point do we draw the line between those two standards? I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't get it either.
Well, on that happy note, I'm gonna have to let you go though.
No, that's okay. I gotta go anyway.
Don't dream about that if you're gonna go to sleep soon.
No, I got a couple hours before sleep, but then I got to work tomorrow. But yeah, have a good one, and I'll have you guys on my thing in a few weeks when I get to it.
Alrighty. Hey, and I've been watching them. They're good, so I'll keep watching.
Okay. Well, there'll be another one this Sunday.
Alrighty. And is it alright if I put a link to your channel on my show
yeah, please.
Alright.
The average view is like 20.
Alrighty. That's all I'll do.
Okay. Have a good night.
Have a good night.